There you go.
All right, do that again. It's 6:33. I'm calling to order the regular monthly meeting of the Economic Development Commission. The agenda has been converted to now completely unreadable on the screen. So Joe, I'm going to try one more thing. Oh, sorry, no, I see what the problem is. Give me a second. Yeah, getting there. All right, additions or deletions to the agenda, citizen comments. We're going to switch the order of old business. We're going to do the housing working group first, because I think that will be quick, and Trina is on the clock, and so we try to do the housing stuff first.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about the communications and marketing plan. We will turn to, it's not quite new business, which is launching the impact of tourism working groups that we identified as part of our survey process and as part of our analysis and commitments that we made over the last 3 or 4 months. So again, citizen comments, if they're related to these topics, we are going to have time to intersperse citizen comments with EDC comments. I am going to be a little bit tougher today to make sure that EDC members have the full opportunity to ask questions during the marketing communications discussion, because I think it's really important that we understand as much as possible. I know everyone has read the materials. We've had them in advance. Thank you for all of that, for Greta and the team to put all that together. So are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Right, hearing none.
This is Linda Treesh. I just didn't see myself on the agenda, but I think I was on it. I was supposed to be on it.
Correct, you were supposed to be on it. So I'm going to suggest we do that at the I'm going to suggest we do that at the beginning, but if the discussion takes a long period of time, then we'll postpone it to another time.
Okay.
So we'll add to the item. The item on the agenda is a grant. I believe it's for $2,000 that was given to one person who used to. Linda is going to explain it. It's basically whether or not we can redirect a grant for the same purpose to, now that the person who received the grant is no longer with the organization. This may or may not bring up a set of issues. We'll just have to see. Linda, we'll do our best for that. Sorry, I forgot to put it on the agenda. Are there any other additions or deletions to the agenda? No. All right, hearing none. Are there any citizen comments on topics that aren't on the agenda then? If you are online, we've got about 15 people online. If you can raise your hand by hitting the comments, but no, by hitting the reactions. I don't see the reactions button, but I think you'll find it. All right, no, hearing none then. Jill and Trina, do you want to take us through the housing working group ADU applications?
Yes. Do you want to show them on your screen, or would you like?
I can, yeah. If you want to
Okay.
tell,
Okay.
All of this is posted on our website. If you want to just tell me, what to show.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. I'm Trina Tolliver. I'm the housing advisor, and I'm here to present a ADU workforce rental application for Sean Audsley. Most of you in the area have seen that he's been working on this project for a while. This building was an old barn, and so it's been a work in process for a while. And the first, so basically an existing structure that's being converted into 2 units. The first floor is a basement on the very bottom. You can see that in the back where this guy's walking. The middle floor's offices, and the top floor are the 2 housing units. Sean's aware of the housing shortage, so though he started this a while back, he's still not done with it. So he's decided to create 2 additional units while he was in the middle of doing his construction for the office. He is requesting the $10,000 per unit for a total of $20,000. That would place the units into our program for the AD workforce rental for 3 years, where he's aware of the qualified tenant requirements, and he would lease it to a qualified worker. I've been there and seen the place, and it's gonna be nice. There's some other pictures of John, if you want to scroll down and show them. That's the front door. That's the stairs going up to the 2 units. And at the top, there's a little hallway area and then doors to each of the units. You can see this is the living area and the kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and he's going to put in a washer dryer and a storage closet. So I'm here today to see if you will approve the grant funds for Sean Audsley.
I think we can do the 2 applications at the same time, unless you think that there's something unusual about the next one.
No, it's not AD workforce though. It's a rental incentive. So
All right, that's fine. So let's go ahead. Are there any questions? Let's just do this one then, because this is, and it meets all, I mean, needless to, sorry, we've been asking this every time, right? It meets all of the requirements and so forth of the, it meets all of the requirements of the application.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
there any-
EDC Housing has reviewed it and approved it as well.
Any questions from EDC members? No? All right. So Trina's making a motion that we approve this. Is there a second? Second. Well, sorry, Trina can't make a motion, and neither can Jill. So I'll move that, that we approve this. Second. Second. Is there any further discussion? Are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, next.
Thank you. The next application we have is for Lee Garsh over on the South Road. Get to my details. He has a rental unit. It's on top of that barn. He recently purchased this property. So there's a 1-bedroom apartment on, and he lives in the primary dwelling. He heard about the programs and he wants to help with the housing issue. He meets all the eligibility requirements, and he has a qualified tenant in mind who works in Woodstock. I've seen it. It's a nice apartment, very nice apartment. The address is 2409 South Road. And so he is requesting, he'd like to be in the program for 2 years. He'll lease it at our reasonable rental rates for 2 years. And in return, per our program, we offer him $6,000 grant. If you want to scroll down a little bit, John, you can show them what the inside looks like.
Very nice.
Yes, it's a good spot. And he did some work to clean it up and freshen it up with new paint, things like that. So anyway, it has been inspected by the state fire inspector, and it has not been a short-term rental in the past.
Is this the first short-term rental incentive that is this the first unit we've created from those short-term rentals or not?
No, it has never been a short-term rental, or at least
No.
not prior to.
No, I mean, are there other?
This application is under our rental incentive plan. It's not the new rental.
So this is the last property that will be presented to you under the old program. We hope to have the new program going right at the beginning of May. So probably this will be the last one.
And that new program, which is being run by that third party and so forth, is the initial meetings have happened and things are progressing.
Yes, we had a
Yes.
second meeting today.
All right. Are there any questions about this second unit, this third unit, second application? All right. I'll move that we approve it as presented. Joe is seconding. Any further discussion? Larry, are you voting or further? Oh, all right. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Jill, sorry, Jill, could you just very briefly, in 2 sentences, just update the group as to what happened with Dave McKay's 4-unit property?
Yes, Trina will do that. She had the correspondence.
Okay, Trina, go ahead.
Basically, they have withdrawn their application. They had submitted an application for a home on Heartland Hill that they were going to create 4 units out of. They have the plans. Anybody who wants that property, it's available for sale. Plans included, I believe. They took on more than they could deliver, and are not able to fulfill putting those 4 units in place, so they're selling the property, so.
So we had promised a grant if they did the work. We never exchanged any money. So the cost to us are just the cost of time involved, making the
Right.
agreements ready.
Right.
I mean, it just points out the sort of the structural benefit of a program like this, which is we don't expend the money unless we get the results.
Right.
Okay,
Correct, yes, yes.
all right, any other, all right, so that's the housing thing. Thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you.
And I think being transparent about this next topic is the easiest thing. I can't remember any of the details. Linda, could you take 1 minute and explain to us what your request to me was, and we can decide whether we can decide it tonight.
Sure. So in 2020, the EDC granted Chloe Powell a $10,000 grant for music programming that was supposed to be, and I think it had a period of years it could be used over. I don't know what those years were, whether it had a time limit or not, or it was just intended to be over the years, but it was for a combination of, and I think it's roughly intended to be about $2,000 per event, but a combination of a school programming in Woodstock and a public performance in Woodstock. And then you guys would provide $2,000 towards that combination. And she did a couple separately from Barn Arts, because at the time she was running this as something called Global Local with Zach Niles. And then we rolled it into Barn Arts. And we did get one payment that came to Barn Arts in June 2022, which was for La Musique, who performed that April-May time. They did a performance at the Little Theater as well as in the schools. And I think that Chloe also asked for funding from this in last May. She got some money for a Ukrainian group that came through that performed in the school and also performed at the Little Theater. And she's since taken a position at Chandler Arts, which is in Randolph, so it's kind of removed from Woodstock. And she told me there's still $4,250 left in that account, left in that grant that haven't been used. And she encouraged me to try to, use it because we still do that same programming. And last fall we had Seon Camera was here, and he did workshops at the Woodstock High School as well as the elementary school, and then a performance at the UU Church. And we did provide the school programming for free to the schools, and just had by donation at the church. And so I was looking to see if I could access that money for $2,000 to cover some of the costs of that free programming. And then in the future, I would also like to have access to the rest of the money. And then hope that in the future we could perhaps renew the grant so that it's something we can do, have once a year, have some of this money coming to accomplish this very specific task of like school programming in Woodstock combined with a public performance with the same artist.
Well, let's separate out the future. Let's leave that future thing aside, but just with
Sure.
respect to the grant and the movement, does anyone on the EDC have
I have.
a question or a comment? John?
What, exactly how much money is left?
4,200.
And then
42.
you want, and you want 2,000 to pay for this past performance, is that correct?
Yes,
And the remainder you want to use for future
yes.
performances or whatever? Okay, thank you.
Deborah?
So it's actually it's 2,000 something that's going to be remaining, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
After this.
After-
All of this money is encumbered. This-
Yeah, exactly.
It's the question.
Yeah.
The question for us really is, we've never had a grantee disappear.
Yeah.
The grantee is no longer here, that the organization's merged. So
Right.
that sort of means is now Barn Arts the grantee? So that's the question. I just didn't want to decide that. I mean, my instinct was, just send us a memo that explains how what you're doing
Right.
is exactly consistent with the original grant. And my instinct was to say we should continue this, but I didn't want to make that decision alone. So we put it on.
Yeah.
Some people are nodding their heads. Does anyone have a concern with that approach?
No, I think that's a good way to go about it.
Absolutely.
I do think, Linda, we need more than just this verbal discussion and one you
Sure.
had with me. I think you should write us a memo or a letter and explain, I think, how the organizations came together and why what you're doing is exactly what the grant asked to do. And then I
Okay.
think we would, it seems like we're all amenable to approving that once we see the letter.
Okay, that sounds great.
And probably what happened to the original grantee, right?
Well, yeah,
I-
explaining that,
explain
that the program is still there, just the grantee is, or the program is sort of there.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing.
We're doing the work.
Something
Yes.
for us to consider in future in our grant application process, just from like a covering that box in the future.
I think actually our grant agreement says that it's not transferable. It doesn't mean, what that means is that you can't assume it's transferable. We can always decide to
Right.
do it. I think it says that, but I'll check. That's a good point.
Plus, we're doing the sunset clauses now, or discussing
We-
doing.
Right.
Correct. Well, no, we are doing them now as the new grants are coming online now, and they all have one sunset clauses. Linda, is just so you know, that grant did not have any sunset clause in it,
Okay.
so that it doesn't. And we can override the sunset clause if there's good reason to. Okay, so Linda, that's how we'll deal with it. We won't vote on anything tonight, but we'll wait to see your letter, and as soon as you send that to us, we'll consider it at our next meeting.
A little.
But I
Okay.
think you have the general, I mean, there's a notional support for it. So.
Right. Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it.
All right,
a
thanks for
good
the
night.
reminder.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is to discuss our communications and marketing program. We have two excellent proposals. The marketing committee has a recommendation. And Greta, I don't know if you want to say anything at the beginning, but one thing I would ask though is that I'd like to get after we hear anything you want to say and hear the recommendation briefly. I would like to just go into Q&A from EDC members first. And then a discussion of what we want to do. But I'd like to make sure that I'd like to spend as much time as we have and need to make sure we understand what it is we're trying to vote on. So do you want to say anything?
Beth is gonna represent the, and give the recommendation.
Okay, that's great. Go ahead, Beth. I'll turn.
Shoulder.
Oh, cool.
Hi, I'm Beth Finlayson, and I am representing the majority of the marketing committee. And I am reading a recommendation written by Jennifer Vincent, the marketing executive at the Woodstock Inn and Resort, who is a very important member of our committee, as well as Greta, Jeffrey, right now still Patrick Fultz, but he's moving on at the end of the month, and myself. And our recommendation is as follows. The Woodstock Economic Development Commission Marketing Committee has evaluated the proposals of both Jessica Kirby and Class 4 from the March 24, 20 through February 25 calendar year. We were impressed with Jessica Kirby's proposal, her marketing approach, outlining how she would achieve the proposed goals, the engagement of the community members who recently, after the engagement of a community member who recently located her family to Woodstock after falling in love with the area and now owning a home and having her child in our school system. It serves as a compelling case study reflecting the success we have aimed for in our marketing campaigns over the years. We are delighted to have her strengths and connections in our community and appreciate her willingness to work with us and to obtain the goals set forth by the EDC this year. However, the Economic Development Commission Marketing Committee is currently recommending that we continue working with Class 4 for the 24-25 period. Our collaboration with Class 4 over the past 3 years has been an invaluable investment of time and strategic use of our marketing dollars. Interrupting this momentum would pose a significant setback. Class 4 is well acquainted with our photo and video assets, brand tone, database, preferences and all of the algorithms for our social channels. Excuse me for this. We are currently experiencing success and have a well-established communication plan. Given the proven success, it seems counterproductive to halt this working strategy. Our partnership with Class 4 has enabled us to implement creative solutions at a nonprofit rate. For the upcoming year, Class 4 has agreed to work within a budget that represents 47% decrease from year 1 and a 24% decrease from year 2. Given the substantial dedication we've poured into cultivating this partnership over the past 3 years, it's imperative that we safeguard it from dissolution due to budget restrictions. This collaborative effort transcends the financial allocations for the communication platform, as well as encompassing a committed group of marketing professionals generously volunteering their time. We strongly implore the board members of the EDC to meticulously assess both proposals, acknowledging the undeniable value and success inherent in sustaining our partnership with Class 4 as the most successful plan moving forward. So that's our recommendation. And I just wanted to say to the commission and here and online that having sat through 99% of all of your meetings and hearing community members as well as the board discuss quote unquote the marketing of Woodstock and how it needs to pivot, which we did very well during the flood, thanks to Class 4, that I am surprised that everyone in this room doesn't acknowledge the history of Woodstock. In the late 19th century, Woodstock was a tourist town. It continues to be a tourist town. It had a railroad that brought people here from Boston. The Woodstock Inn has been here since the late 19th century. Our businesses depend on both residents and visitors to have successful businesses. And that for some reason, this commission and this community, some community members, certainly not all, but there are community members that seem to want to shut it off and all of a sudden become a cute little town without people walking on the sidewalk. And that's really frustrating. The chamber is going to continue their marketing commitment, no matter what happens with the EDC. Our job is to help businesses succeed in Woodstock, and that means reaching out to Boston, New York, and places south, north, west, etc. And that this community wants to shut that down, I don't understand, because we are a tourist community, and I'm sure that's why most of us came here. We drove through, said, what a cute town, let's stop and see, and poof, we've moved here. You know, whether it was in 1977 when I moved here, or 2000 when many of you moved here, and everything in between. We're a tourist community, and that needs to continue. And I implore you to work with our chosen professional, given the amount of, we meet every 2 weeks, the amount of time and energy that we've put in to make these to present you with these proposals, and and I encourage you to go with the majority of the committee.
Thank
you.
Okay. All right, I don't think we want to, I hope folks who are sitting here and so forth have had a chance to look at the proposals, because we're not going to present them tonight. So let's just go into questions that EDC members have for, Jess is online, Charles is here. When, yeah, I think that would be good, yeah. And Jess, we can see you there, so Todd, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Beth. I think just as a sort of a side note, I think it's important that just sort of like on the listserv, when 3 people out of 2,000 might read a piece of article and have a loud voice, and anything with, you know, public items like these where there's strong thoughts one way or the other. It's not the whole town. It's not this, it's that. It's just, and it's really important because you represent the merchants, which are really important to us. I support merchants. I'm a merchant. But you know, people have a right to feel how they feel. And I know you know that, but I just want to point out for the record that the whole town isn't against this. The whole EDC isn't against this. It's just a complicated problem that we've been working on for many, many months and almost 3 years now with me. So, you know, I appreciate both sides and understand both sides. I really mean that. And I appreciate all your work that you do, Beth, for the town. And I appreciate you bringing up the history as well. So with that said, you know, I've read the documents put forth were just so professional and well done. And Greta and the group, it was really just so much work into it. And I've come to the conclusion myself, spending a lot of time with this, and I agree with Beth's ultimate assessment of Class 4, mainly for continuity, and I believe we are getting a steep discount. I also really want to point out that a targeted approach, and that, you know, my thought, which I've discussed with some members, is, you know, if this complex machine can't get us to some metrics, then probably no one can. But if no one can, then that's sort of the time where I'd go more for the local option. And Jess was a phenomenal proposal, but you know, there's sometimes I feel like you need to go with a major film studio to make a film versus an indie house. And for us and where we live and the work we've done, I look at Class 4 as the major studio. So I support voting for Class 4 for this, and I support really finding a more targeted approach on if any of this works the way citizens on both sides want it to work, and maintaining that it can be tweaked without great expense as we pivot and adjust in the future. That's about my 2 cents on it, but it was a lot of work, and I appreciate that from everyone.
So Todd, if you would just change that end to, I appreciate that for everyone. So that becomes a question as opposed to.
I appreciate that from everyone.
Right. But that's great. Thank you. And, you know, obviously our points of view are going to seep into the discussion, but I think if we have questions, I've got a couple of questions about clarifications about, so that I can at least evaluate the proposals together. So if we can first stick, there's going to be time to continue these kinds of, you know, comments and perspectives, but let's just sort of get to factual or, you know, questions first. I'll just jump in with a couple. So one question I have, which I'd like to pose to Jess, and then a version of it to Charles as well. And I'll ask both questions, and then Jess, I'll turn to you, is one of the rationales for continuing working with Class 4 was that we have a content library, if I can call it that, or a body of content, you know, emails, database, video, algorithms with social, you know, photos, whatever. And obviously that content is important. I know you're not, you know, you're not coming in from Mars. You have a lot of local capability. How would you make up for the fact that you don't have that yet? And what would you expect? What are you assuming you would get from Class 4? Since
Have what yet?
she doesn't have our database of content yet. Oh. What are you expecting as part of, what were you expecting in your proposal to get from Class 4 in order to be able to do what you promised? Anything, everything, somewhere in between? Do you understand the question? And then the question for Charles is, if we decide not to work with Class 4, what, if anything, is the process for the transfer of that content?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would need to know from Class 4. I don't know what Woodstock paid for and what Class 4 owns in terms of content. I actually already do have a lot of content just from living here and creating other Woodstock content for my own purposes. So I have a decent amount. Like I said, I also live here and it's pretty easy for me to create content quickly. I don't really understand the social media algorithm thing. I don't understand what that's referring to. I don't understand that question, but in terms of content, yeah, I feel confident that I can produce what needs to be done if class 4 is saying that I don't have access to anything that they've done in the past.
I'm not saying they're saying that. I don't want to put.
No, I know. I'm
this is
just
a question,
saying
yeah.
that if that's the case, yeah, I feel.
Your proposal is not contingent on the delivery of the entire library of what has been built.
No.
All right. Carl,
Yeah, I can certainly jump in. So I think first of all, the collateral that we've developed fits into a couple different buckets. Some of it is top of funnel content that was created. So that's like the first touch point for digital advertising. And when you bring up the algorithm, that's what we're talking about. Jess's program, from my understanding, is a little bit more organically tuned. So the content that we have in place may not be as useful to her for those purposes. That said, we would facilitate the transfer of collateral to the EDC. That's something you could bring up with Tim, who is the primary touch point at my company.
Okay, and
Can I ask a technicality question? When we talk about things like funnels and touch points, in like marketing seems to have its own jargon. If you can define what that is that an ad that was a Google ad that somebody clicked on, or what was that touch point?
Yeah, so essentially what we have right now is a program which sits across 4 major phases of the customer journey. Those who are discovering Woodstock for the first time, gaining awareness, maybe they have some awareness, and from there to consideration. So looking at what it's like to live here, to visit here. And then from there, we try to bring that prospect here and convert them. Each one of those phases represents a part of the journey that we bring that prospect on. And our program is based on automating that journey and serving specific information at each step of the journey to sort of bring prospects to the next step. And so we've created a number of different content types that fit into that program. Some for like a first touch point that's more authentically tuned content, aspirational, what the prospect might want to see. And then a little bit farther, different segments of like, you're interested, for example, in food and events, you're interested in outdoor sports, and serving different content lower down in the funnel.
I'm still so
helpful?
confused. Maybe because you said it's something that the person wants to see. So it's a photo. They saw a photo.
That's right. So there's photo, there's videos.
In the photo is in a blog somewhere that's not our blog. Are these things that are like out there in the world that are, so it's an ad?
They're both ads, they're used in blogs, they're used on the website. Basically, every one of those phases has like digital resources attached to it. So the first step are ads. That collateral was created in partnership with the Woodstock Inn. So it's actually, I think, co-owned at some level, shared between the Woodstock Inn and the EDC. And then from there, some pieces of those collateral are also used on the website, in blogs. And then there's also ads that sort of retarget prospects we know have come here. One of the foundations of our program is the email, and we've seen great success with engagement for those messages. In fact, that success actually matches the organic engagement roughly in terms of time on site. So we know that we have a highly engaged, highly qualified audience who we've captured through those ads, and we're serving them additional content, photos and videos in the form of blog.
all right, can I just finish? I have my one more question. Is that all right?
I have one
some
also.
All right, so Greta, then so I'll finish, then Greta, then Joe, and we'll keep going.
I may have
You know?
questions.
Oh, sorry, Michael. Sorry, I knew somewhere at this end. You guys look the same. Okay.
Michael, I'm also happy to sit down with you and walk through this in detail over
my
coffee or.
My second question is also for both of you, and it's the same question for each of you. So Charles, I'll ask you, I had her go first. I'll ask you to go first this time. In different settings, but with each of the two of you and your associate colleagues, I've heard something that is perplexing. When we talk about wanting to get people to come to Woodstock, both of you have expressed confidence in the ability of your platforms to do that. When we've had discussions, when people on the EDC, Larry is one, but others also, have asked, how can we, if we needed to, dampen the number of people who might come during peak seasons? Both teams have responded well. We can't control everything. There's a big internet out there. So my question to each of you is, which is it?
Ultimately, I think Jess and I are in a similar position here.
Right.
We can control the attributed traffic that comes to Woodstock. Those are the prospects that we touch with our programs. Beyond that, changes in the market, endemic press, aspects like that can certainly drive traffic that is beyond our control. That being said, when you think about how you react to consumer behavior, you're impacted by the touch points from the past day, 2 days, the past week. Like if I were to say, John, do you remember the ads that you saw 2 months ago? And are you making decisions in your daily life based on that collateral? You'd probably say no. But consistent, repetitive messaging over time will lead to an action. And in this case, that action is visiting Woodstock. That's conversion intent.
But I guess the question, and I'll ask Jess the same question, I'm not picking on you, Charles, is if give us, obviously we can't control everything, but you're saying we can affect something. Can you give a sense of the rough proportion of that? Is what we can control a tiny piece, almost everything? I suspect it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, there's a number of.
How meaningful is the piece that we can control?
So in the case of our program, what we're primarily looking at are the signals which we're using for the targeting. So we can control things like who we're targeting, when we're targeting them, and we can turn that up or down. So essentially for the off season, we can ramp up all those touch points. We can create more volume and increase traffic to Woodstock. We can also turn that down, and those prospects don't see any advertising at all. What that means is that you're only communicating with captive prospects that are following you on social media, that are engaging with your channels, and those are really the audiences that you would want to turn down in that environment when you're looking at taking traffic away, because we can't control the shelf life. We can control with a very high degree of specificity how many times a prospect in our audience sees an ad. Right? We can say 0, we can say 7, right?
But yeah, right. Okay. Well, no, I mean, it's hard. It's a very difficult question to answer. Sure. Let me give Jess a chance to not answer. Jess, you said.
Mean, yeah, I would have to agree. I think, we say you can control what you can control because you can only control the people you're talking to. And when you're talking about a place like Woodstock that's frequently featured in national and global media, and that is seen as a place where people want to go, particularly during the fall and the holidays, there's only so much you can do about that. And that's why in my proposal, I talked about also helping people navigate the area while they're here, so that even when it is busy, we are helping to manage some of the crowding and congestion that's happening while they're here, which is just as important as trying to control how many people are coming here.
John, may I just follow up one more point? Part of the reason for the increase in traffic, which was frankly overwhelming by everyone's standards. I know for me, you couldn't get down Central Street, you couldn't get into Montbert. So I'm familiar with the influx that we experienced over that period of time. And what I think we need to remember, the objectives of the marketing program, which was created and delivered 2 years ago and has been running for a period of 2 years, those objectives were solely driving tourism traffic to Woodstock for 2 years in a row. And so we can say that, in a sense, the program succeeded in those objectives. But when we look at the objectives for the year ahead, those are not the objectives. And so we can reasonably assume a lower volume of traffic simply because we're not activating the audiences in the way that we've been activating the audiences over the past 2 years. Part of that is under our control, as Jess said. Part of it is not. Part of it is entirely an outside factor based on the market. And that particular aspect of things will lead to a decrease in tourism by itself, just because a national trend in hospitality and tourism is looking that way in general. So regardless of anything that happens here tonight, you will see a decrease in overall traffic volume this year and next.
Yeah.
I can say that with confidence just based on metrics. Over the past.
Yeah, it's it's an impossible question to answer, but it's troubling that none of us can answer it. I can't either. But so Michael and then Joe, and then Michael.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about maybe from both Jess as well? I've done ad buying in various other capacities, and what I always found is that when I bought the placed ads in even if it was blogs that I curated that I knew that was my audience, I would get a large volume and I wouldn't get the actual end action, even if I like traced them through to, it was a donate button essentially.
Yep.
When I went through social channels and when I went through things that were trusted groups or whatever that person looked at, I found YouTubers as being my most successful category.
Yep.
I saw the most return on the dollars spent. And so, like, as a driver of action, when I was looking at this, I was trying to fall back on things that I knew that worked well for delivering messaging to people. And so how do you see the places where you're putting resources for both of you, where you're putting resources, energy, and efforts into yielding the best kind of return on the investment?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. So what you're referring to is a dichotomy that our industry struggles with every day, and that's the prospect to lead qualification rate. We can go buy a bunch of people. Are they qualified? Are they actually going to come visit here, or are they looking for a contest? And do they want to just enter a free night giveaway at the Woodstock Inn? That's the question, and it's something we pay a lot of attention to. A couple metrics over the past year, just to sort of clarify that performance. We look at a few different KPIs at the site level to sort of estimate visitor intent, the same way we estimate purchase intent. One of those is number of pages per session, and another one of those is time on site. It's one of the simplest metrics we can use to compare different audiences and different groups. And we've gone so far as to actually segment those by the interests that we're targeting with the ads. Backing up to like 100,000 foot level, for your organic search, and this is why SEO is a really important conversation, and I know it's going to come up tonight on the website. For organic search, this is your most qualified audience. And that audience spends an average of 1 minute and 1 second on your website. That's significantly higher, by the way, than it was pre-COVID and pre this program, significantly. And that user is one of the lower engagements. They're only looking at about, well, 0.8 pages per session. So they're really not digging that far, but it's a touch point. They're looking at Woodstock. Organic social, so that's the social media program outside of ads, even though it's the same channel, right? That these are ads we're not paying for. That audience has 0.53. It's actually the lowest time on site out of any of our groups, 0.53, and an average time on site of 18 seconds. So it's certainly one of our—
Charlie, I'm sorry, I missed that.
18 seconds.
18
seconds. Joe, these numbers seem really small. Remember that we're dealing with hundreds of thousands of prospects over time, right? So they seem really small, but you're sort of calculating that average based on everything from bounces to those who spend, 2 minutes. But in terms of time on site, when you really think about how much time you spend on a site, it's not very much. So those numbers, that isn't horrible. 18 is fairly low. By reference, though, when you talk about like making sure we're getting the most for our dollars, email, that channel, that's 1 minute and 4 seconds on site. It is the second highest qualified group that we're pushing to the site, the most qualified being referrals, which we expect, right? When Condé Nast says Woodstock is the best place to visit, we expect that prospect to spend the most time engaging in Woodstock and considering this as a destination. So email, paid social being 22 seconds, we're seeing a significant value in the prospects we're buying. And that's what we want to see, right? Because we're spending, let's just say, 10 cents a click. We're essentially buying that audience, but we don't want to be spending money on prospects that aren't going to show up. So we need to make sure that they're spending a considerable amount of time, and we compare that again to our organic traffic, which serves as a benchmark for all of these. So what we're seeing here is that the traffic that we're driving by paid channels is not substantially underqualified in comparison to the organic traffic.
If you're using the goal of getting people on the website.
Right. Well, that's right, and that's where the discovery process starts, even from social, right? When we're looking at a place, Woodstock, the social audience is fairly limited. We have a lot more control in the digital audience. So remember that this audience, we pre-qualified them. So this is the top 5% or top 10% of income earners. They have a travel behavior. There's demographic, psychographic, and behavioral trends that we're actually using to pick this audience. We're not handpicking them, but we're not looking at 50,000 people. We're looking at 500,000 to 1 million prospects overall. So those are pretty solid engagement numbers, especially considering that we have a higher time on site for our own email engaged audience. And that's why some of the other programs that you'll want to look at over the next couple of years, for example, bringing more folks to move here, to build here. There is land for sale, right? I have a hard time imagining that in 35,000 qualified prospects a 1 million sized audience of top 10% of income earners north of New York City, we can't sell 10 plots of land by connecting those messages to local brokers and building a user journey to facilitate that process. Right now, we're asking people to move here, and that's worked. Or sorry, to visit here, and that's worked. We have no reason to say that we can't connect a deeper funnel and begin to lay the groundwork for those questions using the same process.
Okay, man, you have another chance if you, is that all right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I
sorry,
would
Jeff?
like to hear from Jess too.
Joe. Do you want to repeat your question? Sorry, maybe I've lost track of it. Or Jess?
I think I can respond. I mean, my proposal is a slightly different approach. I didn't mention any paid advertising. For a couple of reasons, also just being mindful of the EDC's budgetary constraints. And I think my approach is just a bit different. I mean, I think the website, I know this isn't a conversation about the website, but I think that it's a problem. And just hearing Charles talk about some of those numbers, it's just not great time on the site, and it's not great page discovery. So people are getting to the site and they're not really spending much time there. They might be getting there, but then what are they doing when they get there? I mean, I know when I use it, and from what I've heard from most other people locally, it's not very useful for them. So even if we're getting people there, if it's not useful for them, that's not very helpful. I think email is very important. That is a direct way to connect with people who have already opted in, so we know they're interested. I think the website is most important. Obviously, SEO is really important. And social, I think, can just support all of that. I view social as more of like a real-time marketing tool, in the sense that I think the way most people use Instagram is when they're going to a place, they might hop on and either use it a little bit as a discovery tool, or when they're there during the trip, figuring out what to do while they're there. So that is really more to just support people once they're here, showing them what to do, where to go, and also funneling them to sign up for email and go to the website. But again, we need a website that's useful. So I'm hoping that answers your question. But and not to say that I can't manage paid ads, but that just wasn't part of my proposal or strategy. I think there's better ways to use funds, essentially.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna ask a question that's gonna be equally impossible to answer, but it's something I feel should have. If I remember correctly, when we took those surveys, that a lot of folks on this commission worked very hard to conduct. If I remember correctly, the survey showed that there was an increase in the amount of people coming to Woodstock. It also showed, if I remember correctly, the thing that stuck out to me is, but per person, money spent was less than it would be before.
That wasn't the survey, but that's what the data.
That's what the data said,
That's
right? And then I think part of the survey showed that the people having been here and left, commenting on their stay here, wasn't always positive. So my question is, I'm curious to know why we should keep spending money to get Woodstock full of people who will spend less and we can't feed. And they're gonna leave here without a real positive impression of what their stay was here.
Isn't that
Well-
a question for us rather than for them?
I mean, I can point to parts of that, Joe, but John, to an extent, is right. I mean, there's no one in the room is doubting that focus needs to be applied on the experience of dining in Woodstock,
Yeah.
engaging with our physical storefronts.
Well, the dining part, Charlie, I completely understand. That's not in your
No,
realm.
you're an expert. I'm going to go back. Yeah.
But it's something that if it conducted in a more responsible way,
Right.
I think, well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Give me a chance to answer, because I think I can do a pretty good job of really discussing that in two buckets. Joe, the first of those buckets are that we scaled the program substantially into year 2. And we made a lot of impressions, and those impressions had an impact. The highest peak travel season occurred in the fall, after we spent $5,000 over a very short period of time in response to the flood. By the way, at which point in time reservations were being canceled at the inn and every bed and breakfast and lodging facility in the area. So it was somewhat of an emergency situation. I think we can all agree that to some extent the program worked too well, and the qualification could have certainly been better, but it wasn't catastrophic by any means. That said, the second bucket is that the objectives for the year ahead do not point to tourism in any peak season. It's a different set of objectives. And so while I understand the validity of that question in the context of a 12-month marketing program aimed at bringing tourism traffic, bringing tourism volume to Woodstock, that would make sense. But the objectives of this particular program that we're discussing tonight,
So I think, Charlie, what you're saying
School
is
choice.
your goal and your job was just to get them in here.
No, we had a substantial amount of qualification along with it. But as we scale the program up,
Which makes sense to me.
Yep.
I mean, that's why you get hired.
as you scale the program up, you lose a little bit of that qualification. Remember that we're talking about a period of a couple months where we spent a considerable amount of money in a very small pool of audience because we wanted to bring people today. Remember that the climate at that point in time, Joe, was that we need people here now. It was an emergency. So that's how we responded. Now, in retrospect, with the learnings, and that's the beauty of a program like this, we can evolve over time. We would probably extend, we might not spend less, maybe we would, but we'd extend that qualification range in a farther geographic area. We wanted to find people not as far as New York who are going to come here now. And I think we went about that far, but we would certainly do things differently. That said, it was successful in accomplishing the goal outlined at the time, which is bringing tourism volume to Woodstock. The goals this year are substantially different, right? They're looking at school choice and generating qualified leads. We are talking about generating off-season traffic, which was not a discussion that anyone engaged in prior to the flood of last year, which sort of built out a proven model for this, and also better managing the events funnel. By the way, Jess and I think most in the room would all agree the website is a problem. It's something that we've been noting for a number of years. Everything that Jess said in terms of, okay, I'm not going to get too into it, but it's something that needs to be considered because each one of our programs, Jess is included, for example, with her events program, either need to be implemented in a different CMS platform, which is a larger project, or we're sort of stuck with this origin site until we can deprecate it. And that isn't going to happen tomorrow. So we're kind of in the middle. Like there's nothing really to do there. It's a bit of a stalemate until the decisive action is made around deprecating the existing origin site and moving to a new CMS, which we support.
Jess, do you want to address the question that Joe asked and then Marianne?
John, put me on the list.
And then Deborah.
Thank you.
I'm Patrick, I see your hand, but I'm going through EDC members
She
first.
probably can't answer this.
Can you ask again, just to refresh my memory, because now I'm like, after Charles' answer, I need.
Why would we want to be attracting visitors to Woodstock if we can't serve them with food and space?
And they spend,
And they're not spending, and the growth in visitors, our estimate is that weren't spending. We know that total spending was down.
Hey, John, my comment is about that total spending thing.
Sorry,
And I think it's kind of important.
Patrick, you're gonna have a chance. I will call on members of the community, but I'm going.
Well, it may change people's thoughts on this question.
That's precisely why I want you to make it later. I'm
But
sorry.
it qualifies, it's a fact.
Jess, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think to Charles's point, the objectives now are different. And I think that there's a lot of different things we need to do to address the problems like dining and the experience of people in Woodstock. And I've also included some of that in my proposal about helping people navigate the town better, marketing Woodstock as a hub and giving people recommendations to dine, not just in Woodstock, but other places when it's crowded. I think there's things we can do to better handle during the times when it is really busy in Woodstock and we need to kind of disperse people a little bit.
All right, Marianne? And then Deborah.
So I have I have three small items that are kind of like closing the loop on questions that other people asked that I there were little details that I wanted to follow up on. And then I have one kind of thought / question for more for the EDC. So the sort of the little follow-ups are I know you talked about transferring assets and you know I have no question that that would happen smoothly, Charles. One thing that wasn't mentioned was email lists and what kind of data associated. I know that you use a specific platform, but I'd be interested to know, you know, if the email lists are transferred, sort of how much of the groupings and data could be passed on with that. That's question sort of follow-up one. The second follow-up was, I think that what Michael was trying to ask was about influencers, and whether that was something that either of you had considered. Maybe I misunderstood that. And then the third is the school choice or sending towns. I was surprised that neither of you mentioned using mail, direct mail. From my understanding, that's the best way to target specifically communities in the sending towns. And also just from experience living in previously in a sending town, sort of having a piece of paper that gets passed around. I mean, it sounds really old school, but you know, it seems effective to me, and especially in terms of targeting those specific, very small, in some cases, communities. So those were my three questions, and then just the one thought for the EDC is just, you know, I'm super impressed with both of these proposals, and also the work that's you know, gone into promoting Woodstock up to this point. I think that we also have to think about the fact that one of these proposals is for $54,240, and one of them is for $72,980. And I'm not saying sort of like which is better per dollar, but I'm just saying we have to think about the total expense that we're able to make in terms of our budget, and
Mary,
and
let me
these
can I-
and neither of these include a website, which we'll probably be wanting to do.
Right, yeah, we'll get to, let's stick with the questions to the extent we can. So I think this question is for both Charles and Jess. Jess, do you want to go first this time, and then Charles?
So I'm not sure what the influencer question is. You mean like,
I believe Michael was asking if either of you had considered using influencers as part of your campaign. Did I understand that right, Michael?
Yeah, I was just curious that I was saying, relating to my own experience, that finding trusted brands, individuals, what have you, to bring people in to do the action, I had a better performance rate than placing things like click boxes or ads in places. And so that's, yeah, more or less what I was getting to. Thanks, Mary, for clarifying on that.
So Jess, any response to?
as a former influencer, it was not something that I considered as part of my proposal. I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think that that's really what our goal is. So, and I mean, just from a budget perspective, like influencers cost a lot of money. So I don't think that's something that I would personally consider. Direct mail, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I was part of the group that worked on the school, the new build, but again, just taking into consideration budget, no, I didn't. That's just not something that I think there's other ways to address that that we can do without spending money on direct mail.
Yeah, I would echo to an extent what Jess just said on the direct mail. Part of our approach, what we're really trying to do is give you, the EDC, in this program control over those prospects. We're not really looking to find a lead, you know, let's just say out in Heartland, a prospect out in Heartland, and convince them necessarily to come to Woodstock this year. That may not be feasible, and we can't control the circumstances in their life. What our program is designed to do is actually take that prospect, capture them into an own database as a lead, because they might come this year, they might come next year, and in fact, they might send their child, you know, their kid here when they're a junior. I went to the Woodstock school system. You know, as a county school, we have ins and outs. That's part of the natural ebb and flow. And so what we're trying to do is, again, it's not just a momentary objective, it's a long-term objective. And that objective begins with capturing the data, capturing that profile, and building a relationship with those prospects where they understand, they're educated on why Woodstock is a phenomenal school, why they should send their kid here, why the kid might want to come here, telling that story, nurturing that prospect. And if it's not this year, it's next year. And in the digital space, what we can do is apply greater frequency. So instead of just, again, that one touch point, we can make that one touch point 4 touch points or 5, and we can close that loop with messaging, even a year later. And so it gives you, again, a little bit more bang for your buck, so to say, because you're buying leads that we're gonna own for the next 4 years, the sensible length of secondary education here in Woodstock. On the other question, specifically, influencers were discussed 2 years ago, and it was at that point in time, it was something that myself and others were excited about. Patrick, what we call initial discussions very early on. Jess is absolutely correct in this case, just based on the goals that we have for the year ahead. Like, if the goals were that we need more tourism traffic and we really need to increase that volume, I think an influencer might make sense, and even at the expense of some paid advertising. Like, there are several who, like KJP, Dirt and Glass, like those 2 accounts specifically spend a lot of time in Woodstock, and we have a short list of influencers when the time is right. And that time may be right, but I don't think it's this year, especially based on the explosive growth we saw last year.
Are you familiar with EDDM or every door direct mail by zip code? It's pretty inexpensive.
Who asked that question?
Marion. Yeah. No, Marion, it's not to say that won't work. I think that ultimately there are a number of different ways we can achieve these objectives. And so what we're focusing on is leveraging the existing resources which the EDC has bought and paid for, which we have proven that work. It doesn't mean that there are other methods to activate that audience. Part of our approach in the proposal was OOH, a very simple out-of-home advertising, very simple posters and engaging with those local communities, because that is in Heartland, where I'm from, originally from Woodstock, where I live now. That's what you see at Jake's. You see the posters, and that's a method of community engagement, which is a little bit more trustworthy and can sit alongside digital advertising and help tell a conclusive picture. But again, there are just a number of ways. I'm sure if we all spent 15 minutes, we could come up with 10 more. So it's something we could certainly consider in the future, Mary, and it's a good idea. But again, it wasn't considered the direct mail in our approach.
All right. It's Joe. Can you make it after the Deborah?
Sure.
Sorry. So Deborah, Larry, and then Joe.
Yeah.
Sure. I want to talk about the algorithm
At the very end, fine.
part as well. We had an interesting thing happen with the floods, and the number, when we look at the stats of the numbers from last year that are coming out of businesses, a large part of why there was a decline was we were shut down. And then we had to advertise to get people back, to let them know, like, we have water, we have bathrooms, we have rooms, right? And so you did a great job. And part of what we're working on next, literally, is initiatives to try to figure out how we can handle the flow of traffic and how we can handle some things. There's many pieces that put that together. So the thing that interests me about that is so that there's a system that you can kind of almost like put in a different, put in something different and head them down a different road. Right now, we wanted people in there, or back then, that worked. Now we want something different. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about algorithms and top of,
yeah.
Is that what you mean? So basically, we're keeping a structure together so that depending on our goal, we can head it towards a different direction. Is that correct?
Yeah, I actually try not to use the word algorithm when I can. It's a somewhat like oblique word, kind of scary,
Yeah.
and no one quite exactly knows what it means. When we talk about the algorithm, what we're really referring to is essentially a set of signals that we feed a computer, and we say, go follow these set of rules, and based on what you find, come back to us and we'll tell you where to go from there. Very, very rough description of the algorithm at top of funnel. But what you're describing, I think, is more the top of funnel approach that we have for the program, and that's right. So what we're essentially doing is we've created a runway, a buyer journey, an experiential journey from first touch, which is digital, all the way to messaging, blogs, creative, that ultimately is designed to bring someone to Woodstock. That same, the foundation of that program can be used to target those who we think can move here. It can also be used to target employees. You know, years ago when we were starting our company in Burlington, we did a lot of employer targeting for construction and.
Continue.
Sorry, yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Charles.
Oh, all good. So does that answer the question or?
Yes, I think it does. I think it does. I think there's a multitude of
Yeah,
things.
the program can be used for a number of different objectives. And
Right,
so
it can shift and the amount that goes into it. The next question that I have, and I have one for Jess as well.
Yeah, sorry, let's specify, as you brought this up, specify who you're asking it to, one or both, so that we know.
Okay.
Who is this next question to?
This is, I started here, so,
Good.
and then I wanted to go to Jess. Yeah. When I was looking at the proposal, I was confused a little bit about the time period. And so I just wanted to get clarification. It's not actually 6 months, it's 6 months of work that then is used over, is what I'm now hearing, as opposed, because my concern was that it was, you know, this much more and only 6 months, but I don't think I'm seeing it right.
yeah, I believe that concern was shared by other EDC members. And so I apologize if there was a lack of clarity in our response initially. So the initial RFP response was for a 6-month term, specifically delivering the goals identified in your RFP. Those goals being, as I mentioned before, the qualified school choice leads, an events management program, better navigation to those resources, and then also increase in traffic volume, tourism volume for off season. So in the 6-month period, as things stand today, what we're doing is we're delivering those outcomes on a 6-month time frame. From the end of that time frame, what we proposed to Jennifer and the EDC, the marketing group, is management, baseline management of your core channels, so email, social, and those aspects through the end of the calendar year term.
Okay.
But we would be delivering on the objectives outlined in the RFP prior, at the conclusion of August, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. That's what I wanted to understand. And Jess, thank you so much. This is a really great, clear proposal. And, you know, I just, again, credit everybody with the amount of work that's going into this and the amount of time that we're discussing this to try to get it right. So I think I heard you say that you're not going to be boosting or, you know, picking an audience. Is that correct? It doesn't include ads, or how does it generate towards, you know, specifics in your program?
Are you talking about like targeting certain people or?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I mean,
so targeting objectives by targeting people. Yeah.
So some of that I think would depend on what the data that I get from class 4. I don't know how targeted their lists are and what's in there, what's, you know, what data is already in their information, but I think it would be more how the messaging is targeted towards certain groups depending on what we're trying to accomplish. And yeah, no, my proposal doesn't include paid ads, again, mainly because I was trying to be mindful of the budget that was outlined.
Yeah,
and so yeah, it would be doing that through SEO optimization, getting organic search, social media, direct email, trying to grow that email list, but all organically, not using any paid ads.
So not even boosting.
I mean, again,
So I'm just asking because I just don't know how to.
The number I gave does not include any money towards boosting. If that's something that the EDC wanted to discuss, yes, I can definitely do that.
Right.
But just in terms of what I'm outlining for cost, no, it doesn't include.
But you think you can target an audience simply through SEO and organic, yeah?
I think so, and well, and through email as well.
Got it. I just one more thing about the website. Again, that's another piece that, you know, people have spent a long time on, and we all have said there are issues with people spending time and being able to navigate. You mentioned that's going to be something that you really want to do next. But it's listed in there, so I'm just asking her about it. So it's something that because to me, if we go with you, that's gonna be part of the reason why that there's a next. But how do you see it? Because it feels like you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have to find ways to use what we've done and work it. You know, like I'm just curious what you think your approach would be.
You're talking about the approach for the website?
Yes.
Okay, I need to insist that well, sorry, if it relates to the selection of this.
Yeah.
I
I know it's another conversation entirely, and just in a sense, but it feels like it's a base of her proposal, but there's a base in it. But if you feel like we shouldn't talk.
Well, no, I don't want to prevent us from having the information we need to make this decision.
Right.
Yeah, maybe, I guess, so that I think maybe if you could just limit your comments to how. Well, why don't you address her question as best you can, but I'd like to not.
Okay, yeah, I don't mean to throw a curveball. I just want to understand how you see it. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I
So-
think a lot of us are on the same page that the website is not very good and it needs to be significantly improved. If my proposal is to do the work based on what you have right now. I'm making a strong recommendation to create a new website because I think that that's incredibly important to meet the goals and long-term goals that we're trying to meet here. But what I'm saying is I will work with what I have. And if that's the current website, then that's, if that answers your question.
And Charles is saying this.
Well, yeah, I would say, I'm just going to add one. I honestly, I wish I was in a position to bid on the website overhaul right now as part of the RFP response. It is the opinion of our team that needs to be a little bit of a deeper consideration. Here's why, very briefly. 63% of your traffic is organic. That is the most valuable and qualified traffic that you have. The current website has over 550 pages in the XML sitemap. That is not insubstantial. In addition, a majority of that 63% audience navigates and discovers Woodstock via blogs. That's the SEO value attached to the website. By transitioning the website to a different platform, there will be a substantial SEO impact. There is always an SEO impact. If you were to spend $5,000 to $10,000 on a professional firm just to transition the SEO of your website, there would be an SEO impact. That's how search engine placement works. There's no way we can do this without, but we need to be structured and considerate about how we go through that process. So our recommendation is very much to overhaul the website, specifically the navigation and how a user flows through that website and discovers Woodstock. But to start with where we are today, that's not something we just do. That's something that is a planned process with a number of steps.
Yeah.
And as you know, my team has spent a considerable amount of time in the CMS, something that is incredibly outdated, and many have since deprecated it. It's called a server-side website versus like cloud-hosted site. That's something we need to be careful of, or we'll lose the past decade, which is worth 30 times what you're going to spend this year on either plan in terms of value. And that needs to be really, really carefully guarded at all costs, regardless of vendor.
Thank you.
I agree with Charles, and I would just add that I'm not invested in me being the one who does the website. I don't really care who does it. I just think it needs to be done. And I will also say that people change CMS platforms all the time. It's not like this is a novel thing. You can go from Drupal to WordPress. It's been done. So it's not like companies, businesses people do this all the time. It can be done. You can preserve your SEO. Yes, Charles is correct. It can be, it's an in-depth process, but I don't think that we should be held hostage by the current website because of transferring it over to a different CMS. It's a total.
And that's a debate that we'll have over the next 6 months. Larry and then Joe. Thanks, Jim.
I'll collect that for next year.
Yeah, I'm coming to the community, but I'm just kidding. I've got Patrick and then Susie and sorry, Larry and then Joe.
I submitted a total of 13 questions for the two applicants. I thought they were going to address them. I didn't know. I certainly don't want to go through 13 questions at this point in time. I'm concerned about finances. we've got a 6-month proposal from class 4 for $73,000 plus whatever. I don't know what the cost is of the other 6 months. I guess my question to Charles is what will be the annual marketing budget that we are spending with class 4?
Yeah, we can start there. Larry, by the way, I did read your questions. I received those just a couple days ago, I believe the day before yesterday. So I did not have a chance to respond in detail prior, but I have read them and I can respond to several. That being one of them. The RFP we responded to listed a budget range of $50,000 to $80,000. We bid this project based on experience of being an active, engaged member of this community, living here for almost 30 years, knowing what is necessary for this village to sustain the economic tourism program that you put in place, but also some of the other programs that we're working on, and additionally serving the goals that you identified. The number that you see there is simply what we believe is feasible and realistic based on those goals. The total cost that we have submitted is under $80,000. That was our goal. And so it's not a 6-month program. We're delivering the objectives in that RFP in 6 months, but the objectives that are not listed in that RFP, such as the ongoing maintenance, email, social, for example, those will maintain on the 12-month cycle. So really, this is just delivering those objectives on a shortened timeline versus a 12-month timeline.
Sorry, can I just clarify just from a numerical point of view? I just want to build on this question. So my understanding in reading was that, which was clarified by an email that you sent subsequently and was included in the materials, was that your proposal was for 72,000 or 71, 72 maybe, that there was another $8,000-ish of website costs that would have to be, that were requirements of the program. And that the last 6 months, the September to February, was a cost of either $600 or $1,000 a month, depending on whether we were just having an automated platform or whether some of your folks would be adding content to it, basically.
Yeah, so I'll answer that. So the first part of that, looking at the web costs, regardless of which vendor you select here, if you're not moving forward with a transition of the website, you will incur development costs and that's simply because no one in this room has control over the website. So anything that you want to do to the website today, beyond coffee and pictures, anything beyond that collateral is a billable by Origin, who's not in the room and I can't speak to. What we have done our best to in that document is estimate, just based on industry standard, what that will cost. I believe it to be significantly lower, but it's our job in responding to an RFP to prepare you for the most likely and highest expense possible, which is why those numbers are structured the way they are. And by the way, to update the events calendar for either my firm or for Jess, it's going to be the same cost for Origin to do. They're neither here nor there.
So we should add $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to both of your proposals to
depending on what Jess has in mind. For example, like what we've identified in terms of the events objectives and streamlining that process, alongside navigation structure, making the site more browsable, updating the homepage so it's more discoverable. We see events forward, John. This is in response really to one of your questions that you asked via email. For our objectives, that might be the cost. For Jess's objectives, she'll need to think through and brief what she's looking for her events program, because we're not just going to be able to use a plugin per se, they're currently using a plugin, by the way, but she'll need to just manage that, and the cost might be different. I don't know what she has in mind.
Yeah, all right. So Larry, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to intrude on Larry's question. I'm just trying to make sure he gets an answer to a question, but can you just address the last 6 months piece? Wasn't that another?
Correct. So the total cost that we initially delivered for a 6-month deliverable. The marketing group requested that we reframe that into, or was concerned rather, about the timeline and the discrepancy between August and end of contract term. So for that period of time, what we did is we applied a heavily discounted rate to maintain the program through that period of time. And then at the conclusion of that, we could make a decision for continuing, changing objectives. Ultimately, that total cost still was below the budget range identified in the RFP, and our goal was to keep it under $80,000.
But I guess so just to be clear, that the 6-month proposal was 71.
Yep.
Then if we were to continue with it's between another 4 to 6 for the next 6 months.
Correct.
So that gets us below 80.
Correct.
Right up to
You
80.
should, John, you should.
And then there's another origin charge that we don't know, but might be 5 or 6 or 7.
Correct. You should expect to spend up to $80,000 on this program, but it's impossible for either party right now to fully give you exactly what the numbers are. And that's why we want to make sure that there's dollars to cover any potential liabilities that may come up.
Okay, Larry, I'm just trying again. Back to you, Larry.
Yeah, okay. One of the things, there were three things that were in the RFP that you didn't respond to, and I was wondering why. Increasing the number of qualified employees, providing visitors with better ways to navigate, and growing our resident population. I think Jess did address those. Sort of a question. The second was, in the RFP, we asked for a 5% increase in off-season, I guess, gross sales receipts. And you were not feeling comfortable with that. So what basically we're asking you for is to focus on off-season, yet you're saying that you don't feel like there's any, you don't feel secure in saying that you'll increase that. Is that because of the general situation, economic situation, or is there something I'm not seeing?
Yeah, I can absolutely answer that. So Larry, those 3 questions that you asked were actually the 3 that I identified you probably would ask. So I have responses here for them specifically. On the topic of 5%, it's my goal to be realistic. And that's what we're trying to bring to the table. When I say that 5% is likely to reach goal, that is based on economic factors and indicators in the hospitality and tourism market that will likely come to fruition. That said, in the past month, several of those signals have not translated as we thought. The economy is moving in a slightly different direction than we think. We don't know. It's not that I don't feel comfortable meeting those objectives. It's that I want to communicate that breaking even to last year would be a win based on the economic headwinds we're expecting. A 5%, it does not mean that a 5% increase is not possible. And it does not necessarily mean that I don't think a 5% increase is feasible, but I do believe it to be a reach goal based on last year's standout performance.
So do you feel like if we were not to engage in this at all, that we would have a reduction in sales during that period of time?
I'm quite confident that you would. Yes.
Okay.
Jess,
Jess,
the other
Jess,
so, yeah, your other question. So the off-season goal. Sorry, would you remind me one more time?
Well, there were just some things in the RFP that you didn't respond to.
I actually pulled the RFP up just to go back through to double check. In the background section of the RFP, it says at this time, one of the priorities of the WEDC is development of a communications platform that would work toward the following objectives. And then under that, it lists 7 independent objectives, all of which I know were discussed by the marketing group and the greater EDC. Our understanding from that conversation is that those were not the tasked objectives for the RFP, but rather the total objectives for the RFP's marketing program for this year, next year, going forward. In other words, this is what you're focusing on. What we responded to is the section below that, where it says applicants should expect to manage social media channels and should have confidence in reaching the following measures through a custom communications program. And then we responded to the section in bold under that, which lists the 3 objectives under that. From my conversations with John, just in further understanding what the goals were for the RFP, there were a number of goals identified, and the purpose was to focus this year on a selection of those goals in the RFP. So we did not consider those necessarily in our response. That being said, these are all feasible under our platform, and actually were discussed by myself and the marketing working group at length over several meetings. And actually, several instances of how we could facilitate and accomplish these goals have been thrown out. So these are all feasible, but it's beginning with the 3 objectives that were identified as the 3 hero goals in the RFP.
So excuse me one second. This meeting is going to end. If
I was going to say something, I actually just saw that come up on your screen.
Yeah, it's behind Greta's bag. I think there's a little bit down there. Sorry, I'm the host. I think so. Okay, thank you.
John?
Yeah.
Can I just clarify for
What-
both Jess and for Charles that Origin is putting in $2,000 to $2,500 for a calendar enhancement?
That fits into the rough numbers that Charles was.
That's a little less, but
Yeah.
yeah, we want to prepare for.
All right. Are there other EDC members before we turn to members of the community? There are other questions from EDC members? Oh, sorry, Joe, I apologize. And then I have.
Is Larry done?
Oh, sorry, Larry, are you done?
Yeah, I mean, I had a whole lot of other, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. Go ahead.
But by the way, Jess responded in writing to a number of those questions.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I responded to all of them.
So, it's on the web, I can't tell you what page it's on, but it should be in there actually. in your doc.
Yeah, it's in the document you sent.
All right,
sent out.
Joe, go ahead.
There was this, I heard the phrase quite often during this discussion, overhaul the website. Can you describe that a little more? I mean, that doesn't mean just graphic, right?
So our approach actually
Right.
would not be to overhaul. This will be
Okay.
under 30, John, I promise.
Good.
Our approach is actually not to overhaul. What we'd be doing is taking the design from the existing site, which is good, by a professional firm, and we'd be restructuring the website in a lower cost hosting platform that's easier to manage and just streamlining the user interface. But we would be retaining all that value, maintaining all those pages, and certainly keeping the design, which I don't think any of us have an issue with. It's the user experience, the UI that needs some work.
Well, Charlie, you were hired to do a job. And, all the marketing jargon notwithstanding, we did a job, got people here, more than we had in the past. And there was a lot learned, and a lot, in my opinion, a lot learned, a lot of information garnered. And I honestly feel right now that it's more of our job than yours. What do we do with this from here on? And we are doing that now. I mean, the thing that John is setting up to move forward with addresses that. But I really feel more of town job, our job, to garner what you've accumulated, what you learned, and what you taught us in order to move forward. That's what I think.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from EDC folks? All right, I suspect that the comments from the community are going to be about what we should do rather than questions for the applicants, although if you do have questions for the applicant. Okay, good. All right, well, so either comments or questions. But I just want to remind people, for those making questions, I think you're asking, as we've all been doing, about what each party would bring to the table and how they would operate. If you're making comments, I would encourage you, request that you focus on the decision we have tonight. This is not a debate about whether we support tourism. We are trying to decide whether to spend, in some cases, more money than we have on tourism or on achieving our objectives. So I hope that people are not, that I can't control what comments you make, but I hope the comments you make will help us to make the decision tonight. We have two excellent proposals in front of us. We've had two knowledgeable, helpful people, committed organizations that are trying to help us. We need to decide who to work with, unless there's someone advocating we work with neither. So I hope that the comments and the advocacy from the community will be to help us make that decision, rather than to debate whether or not the community, the EDC, any groups support or don't support tourism. So Patrick, Susie, Roger, and then Seaton. So Patrick, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to clarify a couple things real quick. Marion mentioned direct mail. The budget does not. You don't have a budget to do direct mail. The postage alone would kill your budget. So trust me, I would love to do direct mail. I love direct mail, but you definitely don't have the budget for that. The other thing I wanted to point out is Joe mentioned sales 8% down or something to that effect, and you can't really compare 22 to 23 for a couple of reasons. One, you lost over 60 rooms of lodging just from places being bought and turned into other things other than lodging. Plus, you've got a month, or well, 3 to 4 weeks where there was no lodging spent because downtown was closed. So I think the better way, if you wanted to really look at year over year, you'd probably be better off looking at taxes, or just take July, take that 3 or 4 weeks out. But also just consider, you know, Woodstock has lost a lot of lodging. And so that 1% tax now is going to be lower simply because there's, you know, like the Blue Horse alone, you know, was a high ticket room night. So just a couple of things to keep in mind as you look at numbers on this. All right. That's all I want to say. I think that Jess and Charles did a great job explaining, and you guys asked great questions.
Okay, thank you. Susie, Roger Seaton.
So I think that I certainly hope that you're not being told that there are community members who don't like tourism. That's not correct at all. Especially with the 1% options tax that just passed, there's a significant community commitment to driving sales. It's in all of our best interests. One of the things that I noticed in this past foliage season is that a lot of people came, we spent money to get them here, and they left. If you were in Abracadabra, you noticed that people came here, couldn't get a cup of coffee, they left. That's a waste of money. I think that one of the best ways to increase sales is to increase duration of time, right? So instead of having people stop by for the weekend, have people come stay for a week, right? So, and I think that just from my own habits of when I spend $500 or $700 on an item, like when I went to Santa Fe, I don't walk into a store and say, I'm going to buy that. We walk into a store, we look at it, we say, gosh, that really is nice. And then we spend the rest of the week, you know, debating whether or not we should buy something like that. And I think that giving people that time is a very helpful thing. And so I think that for the community, getting people to stay for a week throughout the year, right? Rather than trying to drive as many people into town during a peak weekend or whatever. I think that that's the way to go. So I guess my opinion is that tourism is broken. I see advertising as a way to fix it. So do you, Jess and Charles, do you agree? And if so, how would you target people to stay longer periods of time? That's one question. I have another one.
First and then
Sure,
Jess.
I'll go ahead and just answer. There are a few tools at our disposal to manage what the experience actually looks like. One of the methods we're using to actually capture those leads from prospects is incentivizing them with like a free night stay. The idea is that they get a free night stay and then they purchase additional time in that stay. The Department of Tourism estimates that the impact of a visit here is $1,200. That's significantly increased when it's a family, obviously when it's a couple, when it's multiple days. So we can experiment with things like offering midweek stays, so you experience and then stay for longer periods of time.
By riding things like
Bicycle riding, meaning
dirt bike riding, like all that type of stuff that would be.
That's a big part of our program, right? So we have a few different segments, like those who are interested in food and dining, obviously not an audience we're targeting right now because there isn't any, but outdoor activities certainly, and mountain biking is one of those. Trail running. There are other audiences which we can bring to Woodstock, which aren't spending their time downtown, you know, causing congestion in the downtown district.
Do you have a metric, a way of like saying we are targeting people to stay awake?
That's something we can certainly experiment with. We do have metrics to demonstrate which of those segments are most active. And I can tell you it is not the outdoor experience segment. Now, to increase those segments, like if your objectives this year were, hey, Class 4 and Jess, we want to really increase the outdoor market because we want to bring people who aren't going to spend time downtown. We basically put all our dollars and all our effort and all our ideation into building a program to bring a specific type of person here only, and that would be that audience. Right now, we're basically trying to create outcomes that are outlined in the RFP, and so if that was one of the outcomes, we'd be looking at that. That said, there's no doubt that a midweek stay provides value to the local right. Yep, and we can't control that, but what we can control, again, are signals. For example, families tend to stay longer than couples, so we can look at things like that to increase those metrics. But we only have so much control. Again, we can do our best with targeting, and that's choosing the audience, pre-qualifying them before, but we don't have ultimate control now.
Jess.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a lot about this in my proposal, but I echoed a lot of what Charles said about targeting certain groups of people. So many people can work remote now. Woodstock would be great to market to people to come during the week. They can work remotely if they need to. They can stay longer. Agree, families are a great group to target because they might stay longer. Retirees can also travel midweek. And I think we really need to focus on marketing the town throughout the year and not just during peak times. January through June is kind of almost a dead zone a lot of the time, especially during the week. Last year, Bookstock, and I've actually kind of been emailing with them right now because they were asking me for help promoting it this year. Attendance was sad at some of the events at Bookstock. Some of the kids stuff, there was no one there. So we need to be marketing things like that. In June, we have a Pride of Woodstock now. We should be marketing that. That's a huge thing for the town. So, and there's other things, you know, throughout that time of the year that we can be promoting for people to come here that will get them here during slower times, when we could use the tourism dollars.
Yeah, I think ultimately that question just comes down to priorities and objectives. Again, if that's an objective from the EDC, that's something we can talk about. But again, we start to carefully tread that line, like Larry brought it up actually in his questions that were offline. You run into this challenge when you start pushing messaging out, whether it's through an organic channel, social or through digital advertising, there can be an inverse effect where then we're bringing an audience here, and we can't control how long they stay. So it's a delicate scale.
John, you and I talked. I mean, I thought that one of the objectives was to get fewer tourists that we could have to spend more money for get tourists spend more money.
Our stated objective was to increase tourism revenues during down periods.
Okay, so I'm sure that working with the merchants, they get them to
John, we can't hear her.
Yeah,
we can't hear.
We're not hearing it.
So my other question is currently on the website, it says, under the privacy page, it says, we do targeting, there's third-party cookies. There's a link that doesn't work. It's not even a link, and it just says ad agency to opt out. I understand the agency is not, it's not the responsibility by law, but can you explain, first of all, are you dropping third-party cookies into people's browsers and retargeting them?
Absolutely. So
Then you need to update the website. You need to update the website, yes, but you also have to comply with the law and you need to put some privacy. People need opt out. We can get a big fine.
It's certainly been advised and discussed, and there's an open ticket with Oregon to accomplish that. It's something that we don't have, no one in this room. Yeah, it's
yeah, let's take this. This is a very important issue. We should take it offline, but it's a very important.
And what was your name? Greta. Sissy. Good to meet you. This is something that has been considered and discussed at length. So your considerations are certainly not falling on deaf ears. This is our business. This is, what we do. So we're very aware of those considerations. And again, it has been discussed at length. So by no means am I turning a blind ear to that.
Oh, I'm not.
All right. I'm just going to keep going. We're gonna run a few minutes late, but not excessively late, because I think we have time to do what we need to do if we take an extra 10 minutes at the end of the meeting. So Roger and then Seaton.
want to stand here if you don't mind.
He's gonna.
Thanks. I'm not going to be asking questions specifically, so. The recommendation of the marketing committee said that to migrate to, or to move to a different agency or to a different strategy would be a setback. I'd like to propose that that would not be a setback, it would be a realignment. I don't think that there's any, it's not a criticism of the program that has been done up to now. But what I believe we are talking about with Jess's proposal is more of changing our marketing strategy and our marketing communication strategy, more importantly, because this is not just a marketing strategy, and making it both more nimble, more easily multi-targeted, and make it something that can be changed and retargeted towards different audiences that do things like spread tourism out, and that also do things like look for different economic levers to pull than just tourism. I think it's very unfair to say that there are many people in this town who have said this is not a town that has tourism as part of its economy, but it is not a tourist community. It is a community where people live. And one of the economic levers, as you had in your RFP, was potentially helping the schools with enrollment. I don't think an advertising program is the way to help the schools with an enrollment. I think you're talking about a sales program. You're talking about going back. The EDC could do much better by putting money into the school system and collaborating with the school system. The school system's websites could use a lot of work, and that's a place where having a more web-centric approach to marketing communications could also be very useful. I think what we need to do is look at what is the best levers and the most cost-effective levers to fulfill a multiple number of goals. The website has to be addressed as both agencies have expressed. I understand that there are issues with that, but it does have to be addressed right now. If the fact that you can't build a landing page, if you decide I want to market to people who want to dine in the greater area, the fact that you can't use SEO or Google Ads to push people to that page because you can't make that page except by paying somebody, I mean, this is not the 1990s. You know, we
all agree.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying, you know, you're not responsible for the website. We're responsible for the website. I think we need to, and we also need to look at the budget. And the fact that you're actually talking right now about borrowing from next year's budget means that we need to look for the less expensive solution. And I think when somebody comes in at $54K for a full 12-month engagement, and somebody comes in at 72, 73K for a 6-month engagement plus a minimal amount of work going forward, that's not what this community needs. This community needs a dedicated resource who is able to respond if something changes and we need to start doing something differently. So I would urge you to get back to fundamentals and not save money, but allocate resources as efficiently as possible, because starting to borrow from next year to do a much more expensive program, I just don't think is something that can be justified. And that's not saying anything about the program itself. But think about what this community, what is appropriate for this community and what this community needs in a marketing communications program, not an advertising to tourist program, which is not to say you're not advertising or reaching out to tourists or using whatever other means there are necessary, because tourism is a major part of this economy, but it is not the only economic lever that can be pulled. Thanks.
Thank you, Roger. Seaton? Okay, Seaton and then Greta.
Thank you. And thanks so much to everybody for making your presentations. I have sort of a comment and a question about something a little bit more boring. The quick comment is, I didn't see anything, and maybe it was in the RFP. I apologize if it's in there and I missed it. We talk about the diversity of trying to get people to come here and do more than just shop and eat. And it sounds like maybe that is the objective. But looking at different kinds of people to come here and shop and eat. I heard we're targeting the top 5 and 10%, which is great. The top 5 and 10% has money, but in order for Woodstock to survive 12 months a year, we need people that are more than just the top 5 and 10% coming and visiting and spending money. Some of that is Upper Valley people coming here for more than just wassail. We've got lots of people in the area that could come on a more regular basis, but don't for whatever reason. Just mentioned, obviously, Pride of Woodstock coming up. I'm biased towards that. But one of the reasons that we're doing that is, 1, because it hasn't been done. 2, it's really fun. And 3, to my knowledge, the LGBTQ community has never been targeted for Woodstock. And that is a community that spends money and has a good time. And so that's one of the reasons we're doing it. And hopefully we will be successful. But I'd love to see more of that, whether that's the EDC driven or that's from whoever wins this bid, to look at different groups of people, not just 5 to 10%ers that are, straight white families, that sort of thing. I would love to look at something more diverse so that we can continue to survive in different ways and not just straight tourism during times. And then my question for both groups is, if you can speak more about the wayfinding. I saw that in Jess's proposal about, once people get here, if they don't have a good experience, and that can be not finding bathrooms or, those sorts of things. We're trying to solve that at the municipal level, but I would love to learn more about how in a marketing, advertising way that we can make sure that people have a good experience and go beyond, just the downtown area where they see things.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that first, if that's okay. I addressed that in a few points in my proposal, which I'm not sure if you got the chance to see it, but I think that there's a few ways to approach it. Obviously web, and again, I'm not going to get into the website, but it's sort of a dead end. I think that there's a lot of just simple print and physical collateral we can have. I went to Stowe recently and I just noticed how easy they made it for people to find their way around. A simple printed map in every inn and restaurant, a simple printed sheet that had the weekly calendar for every restaurant. That is such an issue for people here when they come and not knowing where to go to eat because they don't know when things are open. And obviously, yes, sometimes hours change or whatever, but for the most part, we know when places are going to be open and on what days. And what a great way to help people figure out where they're going to go. And the list can be a little more expansive. Maybe it goes beyond Woodstock so that people can kind of spread out. And then also creating a lot of messaging, whether that's blog, social, email, spreading people out beyond the immediate Woodstock area and kind of talking about Woodstock as being their hub, but encouraging them to go to other surrounding areas around Woodstock, whether that's to eat, do an activity, whatever. But I think if we can do that on all the channels, and then the last part of that was, and this will obviously take a lot more than just this idea. We need to get approval and figure out who's going to do it, but maybe doing some actual signs or murals in town, showing people how to get to the visitor center, where are restrooms, where's the green, so that people can kind of more easily navigate when they are in town, finding things and how to get places.
Charles?
Yeah, I think that it's very much neither one nor the other. These two conversations go hand in hand, just like the housing conversation goes hand in hand with the employee conversation. Everything is to an extent interconnected. So in specifically answering your question, Seton, on the events level, that's something that we've spent a lot of time considering. And last year we built out and actually tested and are in a position to launch our events program, which integrates local events into that 35,000 person qualified audience to increase awareness. That audience is made up of both locals and our wide audience that we've captured through the program. And so it basically gives us access to those prospects, having that conversation at what is zero cost for the platform. Like, that's happening by itself. And so thinking about how we can facilitate event managers like you, like Deborah here as well, who are involved in local events and communicating that to our audience. But in general, I just want to make sure that, you know, focusing on the objectives of this RFP versus the considerations and concerns for Woodstock in general, and how should we look at the marketing. In terms of the RFP that Jess and our firm responded to, the three goals, again, 25 qualified leads, development and maintenance of an information channel to educate visitors on the town, and then the events calendar. And we've gotten into, regardless of which direction you go, some of the bottlenecks there with Origin. And finally, an increase of 5% in overall sales. And so what we're thinking about is how to most effectively deliver on those goals. By no means is our program targeting 5 and 10% of income earners who are white and live in a certain geo. That is an example of how specific we can look, but we're not just looking at that audience. In fact, we're looking at a far broader audience. Just targeting that audience isn't effective because it would cost a lot of money, right? The more qualified we get, the more we're spending per click. And so what we're trying to do, we've set up these segments. One of those that we talked about earlier is the outdoor interest segment, the arts and culture segment, the food, the food and dining segment. Those audiences, the family segment, those audiences represent a wide range. And within those, we're obviously not qualifying by any demographics that would be exclusive by any means whatsoever. So we are looking for a wide range. And if we want to look in the local market, we absolutely can. But the idea here in building a list is to create awareness and bring new prospects who have not discovered Woodstock, who have no awareness of Woodstock, because those will be most useful to us 24 months from now, 36 months from now, when the conversation is shifted from how do we support growth in the off season to either A, how do we just support growth overall because tourism volume is down, or B, how do we bring more people to move here because we do have houses for sale and mortgage rates are back at 4%. And the same platform right now that we're leveraging to accomplish these goals can likewise be leveraged to accomplish those goals.
Greta.
Yeah, so I did want to speak tonight because I've spent a ton of time on this process along with my marketing committee members and also members of the EDC. And what I wanted to say is that I was very impressed with both proposals, and I thought they were both very thoughtful and responsive to the RFP. I also think that the level of expertise and professionalism that both parties are offering is something that very few towns the size of ours have access to. So we're super lucky for that. And I'll also say that I have a ton of respect for Class 4. I'm the newest member of the marketing committee, so I've only been on the group for 6 months, and I've had I've been witness to the high quality of their work. I have a lot of respect for Charles and his whole team, and I think they do an amazing job. They already offer the services at a steep discount for us, and I know that a lot of creativity went into their proposal. And so, because specifically having an entirely new set of objectives thrown at them and at a fraction of what we've put in front of them before. I did want to, I've been asked about me being in the minority of the marketing group, and I am in the minority of the marketing group, and my support for Jess Kirby's proposal lies in that she's coming in at the lower end of our budget, our expected funds. And I think that for our town, having a 12-month consistent communications program that is both strong and flexible to the needs of our town will be beneficial to Woodstock. And so that is what I wanted to say about that. And also having the room in the expected funding to have some wiggle room for the investments to be made in BT.com. And the last thing I'll say is that we as a marketing committee are fully all ready and committed to put our efforts towards whichever program is decided on tonight.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. This is the last comment, but go ahead. Yeah. Can you just come up to the thing?
So, I've been on the marketing committee since before we had a marketing agency. And my role on that committee has primarily been to represent the viewpoint of businesses in downtown Woodstock. And so my question is related to that. We're concerned at this time of year, Monday through Thursday until halfway through Friday afternoon, of how quiet it is in the retail shops, not necessarily in Montverde, because Montverde is there's such a demand and so few places to meet it. But those are the months that are difficult in Woodstock to survive. I've over such a long period of time, I've experienced that. So my question to both of these parties is it feasible, and how exactly, because one of the main objectives put out in the RFP is to increase that business so soon, May and June. We're halfway through March. Is it possible, and how would that be done? That's my question for both of.
It's a great group. Jess, do you want to go first, or Charles?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, yes, I agree. Whoever has to do this work is going to need to start immediately. And I think that we're really lucky and that we have some really great things to promote coming up. Pride of Woodstock being one, but Bookstock being another. I mentioned a couple other in my proposal, just in terms of local attractions that I think can get people here. My goal would be to promote on the site through direct email and social, to get people to come here, not just on the weekends, but midweek. I think we probably have to be pretty aggressive in our communications starting as soon as possible, but I do think it's possible, especially given all the events that we have coming up, to get people here for May and June.
Yeah, it's certainly feasible. It's a roadmap that we've executed before on the floods last summer, and we were able to respond within 30 days with overwhelming growth. Bringing back from a point of candidly economic disaster, the images on the news, and certainly the bookings and concerns by the local lodging properties, to the busiest tourism season Woodstock has on record. I would say that's a pretty substantial success, and we have a plan and a program to deliver that once again. In addition to that, I think if this conversation were entirely about money, just speaking, to your point, Roger and others, we wouldn't be having the conversation. It's really about goals and long-term outcomes and how we ensure the economic sustainability of Woodstock, not just for this year, but in 24 months and 36 months, and how we build a program that adapts and scales over time that we can rely on, both to attract new qualified prospects, but also to support some of the other objectives that you brought up that aren't necessarily marketing dollars, but dollars for community engagement and activating the local community, whether it's in Woodstock or whether it's in Hanover, New Hampshire. And so, I would encourage the EDC to consider the goals and the outcomes which we're talking about tonight, and not necessarily the dollar figures, and which program will not only deliver those goals and outcomes most efficiently, most quickly, but also is positioned to support the goals of 24 months and 36 months in the future. Because ultimately, the spend of the EDC will not be the same next year as it was this year. There were some very large ticket items that we're all aware of. That will not be the case in the future. Those were known expenses. So I would encourage you to consider those long-term objectives.
All right, thank you. Larry.
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit. If we're going to encourage people to come here based on specific events and things that are going to happen, who is going to be in charge of creating the content for marketing those things?
Right, Charles first, and then Jeff.
Yeah, certainly. So we've created a library of content over the past 3 years, collaborating with the Woodstock and the resort. So we create all those digital assets and the content, including the blogs, across the funnel for that program.
John, what was you asked a question that was very much related to that. What was your point about, you said there were two things that were online?
Yeah, no, I got an answer to that. It had to do with events. That had to do with, that was more of a generic process of events, not the question that Jeff kind of asked about how could we do it in May and June. So, and I got it, I got it. My question was to, how would Jess do it? And she answered, I got an answer.
And Jess, what would you do? How would you get content?
Yeah, I mean, mine would be the same. It would be myself and my team. Like I said, I have a pretty healthy existing catalog of content, and then I don't know what is available to me from what Class 4 has created in partnership with the Woodstock Inn. I guess that would be discussed, but like I said, it would be whatever I have, and then if we need to create content, we can also do that.
Okay, I guess my point being, there's lots of things going on, and you know, through all this period of time, who's going to collect those and market those? You know, I don't understand from either of your answers what
What do you mean collect what? I'm sorry, I'm just.
So let's say there's 10 or 15 events going to go that are going to happen in May and June. Who's going to bring those to the attention of Class 4 or to Jess Kirby? Or is Jess Kirby or Class 4 to go out and find those and promote them?
Yeah, so I can talk about what my approach would be, which I also talked about in my proposal, but essentially, I do not recommend putting more money into the existing website, but we could use a simple Google Forms, which is free, to collect information for anybody that wanted to submit an event and put it on the current events calendar on the website. We could put a link to that form on the website, and then I would just take responsibility for distributing that form in the community on the listserv and WhatsApp groups to businesses or people in charge of events, that if anybody wanted to put something into the events calendar, they can fill out the form with all the necessary information. And then either I don't know how the process works now with the current website. I don't know who's updating the calendar right now. It doesn't really look like it's been updated. But I assume that I could be trained to at least do the minimum, which would be input those events into the calendar, and obviously also share that information through email and social as well.
I think Beth just wants to make a quick clarification, and then Charles.
I really do, because I'm a little frustrated here. The chamber collects all of the information. We put out a guide, we put it on the green, we put it on the website, and it is really frustrating that we've been kind of left out of the communications piece. We own half the website, and there is a whole system that's in place. Now, if it can be improved, great. I'm looking forward to improving it. I also wanted to say finally, because I know this needs to come to an end, is that I urge the committee to remember that the majority of the marketing committee made the recommendation to continue with Class 4. We have 2.5 years with them. I'd hate to waste that.
Charles, sorry, I cut you. I didn't realize that. I thought Jeff.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So briefly, a big part of our proposal is exactly that question, responding to it. That's the third objective in the RFP that the marketing group, along with the EDC, identified. So a majority of our focus is on clarifying the events calendar process, implementing a more structurally more sound events calendar, easier to post and easier to navigate, and more seamlessly bridging the gap between events hosting and the chamber's management, along with EDC's involvement. So that is a foundational component of our program that we will deliver, solving that issue for the time being. Regardless of which direction you go, the website will be the bottleneck. However, our approach considers that and has a specific plan to implement a more streamlined events calendar that is browsable.
Okay. So I just want to make a couple of comments, and
John, Marion has her hand up.
Oh, she did. Okay, sorry, Marion, I didn't see your picture. Marion, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I just have a quick,
No, go ahead.
quick follow-up sort of confirmation. And I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure it's clear because there's been a bunch of questions about content and what would Jess use if she ended up with a contract. I assume, but I'd love for Charles to just confirm that the assets, photography, video, copy, what of that does the town of Woodstock own? I assume if no matter who we went with, those assets from past events would be available to the town to use. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, anything we've created on behalf of the town of Woodstock. There was a question earlier about the data integrity and how that segmentation works. While we can provide the list, the segmentation that exists in the ESP, that's the platform which serves all those messages, that cannot be passed outside of the platform. It lives inside of that. And so you would lose sort of that segmentation attached to the data and understanding how those targeted groups fit together. However, you would retain the just bulk lists. Again, the value in the data is knowing what the data is and what audiences can be targeted for different use cases. For example, if we have an outdoor event, we want to be targeting the outdoor environment, the outdoor audience rather, not necessarily the arts and culture audience. That's how segmentation works. It's highly specific to each individual audience that they discover the parts of Woodstock.
Oh, couldn't you give us like, here's 40,000 names and
on a list? Yes.
No, and next to it, this person is an outdoor person or an artist.
Yeah, we could basically, we could put that in.
Sorry, Marion, go ahead.
I was just agreeing with John. You probably could export it either as multiple lists or with tags or as a CSV with fields where the interest.
Yeah, I was going to say it can be exported as a CSV. The challenge is the historical data and performance of that's all attached to the prospect. When it leaves the program, you basically get a list of names with tags attached to them.
Okay, fine.
And so it's then a data question entirely.
Okay, Marion, you understand. I mean, Marion works in this field, so you understand what we would be getting and what we wouldn't. We wouldn't be getting.
Yeah, we would get some of it, but not all of it.
Right.
Yeah. The data, not the insights. That's
right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Just a couple. I think we need to take a vote. I just make a couple of comments before we vote. First of all, I think this has been by far, the best discussion that we've had about marketing in the 4 or 5 years that I've been on the EDC, at least from my perspective. I view this next. This is sorry. I want to share the financial the situation that we're in, so that people can make that decision. A number of you talked about well, some people mentioned sort of the budget. So I just want to explain where we are. What we see here are two different explanations of what resources the EDC has available to us, depending on how FY24 goes. So we start with about $19,000 unencumbered. Right, we have more than that in cash. This isn't a cash problem, but because we haven't given out all of our encumbered funds yet, but we start with about $19,000. So that's essentially zero. I mean, it's $19,000. I've put together two possible scenarios for 2024 revenues for the EDC. The first quarter of our 4 quarters of our 4 pieces of revenue in 2024 come from the activity that occurred during foliage during October through December of 2023, and then the first 9 months of 2024. We lag 1 quarter behind. We've already received our revenue for the activity that was October, November, December, peak season, if you will. And that was down 8% from the year before. Not affected by the flood, not affected by, a month of closing and so forth. That was down by 8%. If the other 3 quarters are down by 8%, our revenue will be $340,000. That's the left-hand column. And so with the 18,000, we have about $360,000 of unencumbered funds. If the remaining quarters equal 2023, they're similar quarters in 2023, we'll have $80,000. So 360 to 380, an extra $20,000. That's a pretty narrow range. It could be outside of that range, but let's sort of consider that. We've already committed $264,000. We've committed $70,000 in grants. We've committed $187,000 to housing. Although we said we could claw as much as 60,000 of that back. But right now it's classified as, so that's kind of a,
Why?
why did we say that?
No, why would we get it back?
If we decided to.
Okay,
I mean, I'm not arguing for it or against it. I'm just saying what we agreed to.
there's an option, yeah.
And we approved a year's worth of Origin posting. We might, if we decided, if we were able to agree to move off of Origin before then, we could, this is small money. So
We committed to.
we committed to 6 months. All right, fine. So these numbers are $3,000. I mean, still, the story is about the same. So we have somewhere between 95,000 and 115,000 of unencumbered funds. So we have enough money to pay for these programs, either one. But we have, without considering anything new that happens and remembering that, resiliency is one of our goals, and being able to, respond to emergencies and so forth is one of our goals. I've put at the top of the list, 11,500 for flowers and lights. We made a verbal commitment to take that out of community grants and to fund that. The downtown maintenance group has proposed, has brought forward to us last month and will bring forward to us again next month, $8,500 to maintain, it's sort of the physical equivalent of flowers and lights, maintaining the tables, the umbrellas, that sort of thing. We're in Teagle's Landing. We're in discussions with the town as to who's actually going to do that work. But the cost of it is at least for this year, no one else is going to pay for it. Let me put it that way. Whether they should or not is a different question. Some amount of money for website improvements. You've heard what you heard tonight. And for me, very importantly, some funding for what I'm calling tourism management initiatives. Do we need more bathrooms? Do we need signs for buses? Do we need to create subsidies so we can have more food during peak season? Do we need, there were tons of ideas, a digital bulletin board, the maps that we have to print up, that they do in Stowe, whatever. That's not going to cost nothing. And I think while tonight we're focused on marketing, in August or July, when these groups that we're going to form finish their work and come back to us and say, here's how we can mitigate the experience so that we can have a tourism economy and not suffer from it, we're going to be hard pressed to say, well, that's fine, but we have no money left. Now, we won't say that. We will say we have another year of revenue coming. And so the range of borrowing that we would need to do that is at the bottom of that chart. If things go well, 0 to 15,000 from next year. If things go less well, 10 to 35,000 for next year. Can we afford that? I think we can. I don't like it, but I think we can. So you can each react to that differently. That's the situation we're in.
So are we voting on a budget tonight?
No,
Okay.
this is so that you understand what
Yeah.
what we're voting on tonight is to commit somewhere between 55 and 80, well, no, 80 to 90 if we want to continue it for 12 months. That's
Well, no, it would be 80, under 80,
even for the full 12 months,
correct,
but not including Origin.
including Origin. The entire cost of the program will be under 80.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood that. All right, fine. So it's between 50. So my numbers here are roughly correct. 55 to 80, 55 to 81. Yeah, I'm not, it's rounding.
Do we have to add Origin to Jess's proposal? The cost of Origin?
Jody, yeah, according to.
Well, no, it's already in. He's talking about his proposal.
Oh, I see.
So yes, fine. So it's 60 to 80, but yeah. We might, let's not, yeah. I'm just trying, we don't want to come back and say, wait a minute, you said 55 and then it was 58. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to give everyone a kind of a rough sense, Marion. But I think your point is correct, that there is, if any changes to the website are needed, that would need to be added to Jess's proposal. So that's kind of where we are. So take that for what it is. I just want to say one other thing, which is because I want to put a stake in the ground of my own, I kind of have a slightly different take on whether we should do this with, leaving aside who we should do it with. I think we have made, by setting the objectives we've set and by getting the proposals that we've gotten and by the focus that each of these groups have put onto those objectives, I think we are going to resolve one of the things that makes me most uncomfortable about marketing, about this investment that we make every year, which is that I think we're going to learn, for me at least, for the first time, I'm going to be convinced whether this stuff has an impact or not.
There you go.
And with due respect, and the reason is that we've got 2 of our 3 objectives. Attracting 25 qualified school choice leads and relative growth during a low period, whether that's 5 and 0, we can look at what's happening in the rest of the state and whether or not we've done well or not. And we're going to find out with due respect. I know that our digital marketing statistics are good, very good. I am not convinced that they are having any impact. I could also be convinced that they would have enormous impact. And nothing that anyone has said, either tonight or in the past 30 discussions, has given me the ability to make that decision. We've now, by setting these objectives and by having our both applicants stay faithful to those objectives and commit to them in something that we can actually measure as a benefit. We will either have 25 people or we won't. We will either have 5% growth or perhaps 0%. I understand your point about, if the state goes down 5% and we're flat, that's a win, just as Charles said. We're going to know that after this program. And that, I think, this pilot test that we're about to conduct with one of these 2 firms, to me, is invaluable in trying to decide how we spend the $3 million or $4 million that the EDC is going to get, whether it's us or someone else making these decisions, as to how we should be spending that money. So I am really excited. And by the way, I hope the answer is it's having a real impact and we should be spending more. And by the way, we'll find a way to spend more if it's having an impact. I used to tell the people in my organization, the marketing team, I said, your budget is not limited. You just tell me what the impact is and show it to me. If you can spend $1 and make 3, I'm going to give you as much money as you want until you stop getting 3. That's what we're going to find out, much more than we have up to date. And that's why I'm excited about picking one of these 2 groups. So
I think that's what I was trying to point out earlier. Charlie did his job, get the people in here. And with all the marketing jargon and all aside, now we're going to learn from that experience. We're going to learn from everything we've learned so far and what we're going to do from here on.
All right. So thank you. So I think, does someone want to make, sorry, is there anyone here who, well, let me just say, we need 5 votes to approve anything. So if you can abstain or vote yes or no, but an abstention has the effect of voting no. There's 4, we're going to take 2 votes, I suppose. If the outcome is that we approve both, then we're going to have to re-vote or have a discussion, because well, I guess, I mean, at least those aren't going to be binding votes. Or we could just go around and sort of say, I don't want to say, should we just go around or should we vote all at once? I guess is really the question. Deborah, you look confused.
Well, I didn't understand that we could approve both.
Yeah.
No, we can. I'm just saying if we
We can take a straw vote.
that's what I'm saying, is we have a motion to say who, to a
Motion to pass.
right.
That's what it sounded, that's what.
You could go to the trustees with that. I
No.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just take a straw vote for the moment. So who would be, who is in favor of selecting class 4 for this program? Raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. All right, who is in favor of working with Jess Kirby? 1, 2, 3. And Marion, I know you're sick. Wait, where is Marion? I know you're sick, but can you either speak up or? So which are you voting for?
I'm waffling.
Oh.
I'm waffling, but not now. Don't waffle. I would say based on the budget, I'm leaning towards Jess.
Okay, so it's 4-4. So we haven't approved either one. So we're sorry, that is a straw vote anyway. So I think we need to have more discussion. So we're not going to deal with the next issue. We will unfortunately have to put that off. I don't think the next meeting is only in 3 weeks. The world won't come to an end if we discuss our tourism management issues and form those teams 3 weeks from now. I only just because I don't know if anyone agrees with me, but I don't have the energy to go beyond the end of this vote. Are we okay with that? I mean, I think that's the right decision to make. We also need to invite, maybe give people more notice about this. We want people to volunteer for those teams and so forth.
Yeah.
So who would, on the EDC, who would like to, who would like to, let's just have a discussion, see if we can change someone's position. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a small business and I know how, you can be super professional and just top level and be scrappy and do all the things necessary. And I think that I feel like Jess offers that. I think it's an incredible value. If there was no way to get surplus funding, I would be very comfortable going with Jess and think we get very good results. But just like people come to my company, Mad Old Nut, and versus maybe a smaller company, we have a team of people. We're still tight and scrappy, but having those employees to bat around and sort of troubleshoot and deal with things that could get you an electric idea that can save a lot of hourly billing and time. That's part of what a smaller firm offers versus a more individually focused firm, or a firm starting out, or a firm just with one employee or two. So just feeling like we have a team that already has a shorthand. I feel like for the 22% delta, and the fact that unfortunately we might have to pull funds from our next year's allocation, I feel comfortable, even though I wish we didn't spend all this money in marketing in the past. Personally, I think that I would have voted otherwise. Personally, looking back in hindsight, I feel that the time now is to continue with Class 4. Again, just because the continuity actually has yielded great results. We're changing the target of those results. And I feel like they'll be our best bang for our buck to try to get people in short order here when the town needs them, which is in the next few months. So I haven't heard anything to make me think otherwise, except, again, really, like, both people seem incredibly competent. I just feel like there's a bigger pool of a corp with a small business pod that Class 4 offers.
Okay, Joe, thanks. I mean, Todd, thanks. Were you explaining your vote or changing your vote? I'm trying to understand.
Me, I'm been Class 4. I haven't had a change of.
You didn't change. Okay, fine. I just didn't. So who else? So John, me, Joe, Todd, and who was the fourth person who preferred Class 4? Deborah. Okay, and the other 4 not. All right, does someone from supporting Jess want to try to convince us, the Class 4 people?
Do you have something to say?
You know it probably better than I do, certainly. But the thing that what's one of the things that's helping steer my vote is a concern on the budget, and I don't doubt that a platform that's can do all the amazing things that what we've built can deliver on the outcomes that we want. It's more of is that a tool that we need at this point to accomplish our goals?
What tool?
A platform that's tracking this funnel approach of creating ads and working people to come up to a result. I don't doubt that can create end results that we can measure and weigh against. It's just this actually, it's first, my vote last week or last meeting on the budget, I was pretty sure that I didn't want to spend over $50,000, and so there's a little bit of a voting continuity here on my part. But the other thing is to go back to the concern of outsourcing things beyond outside to service providers. I'm very weary just generally of doing that. And so part of what's influencing my vote is the ability of having somebody that's in town, that I get that they're still a service provider, but is seeing what's happening in town every single day and being able to respond at that speed and being able to market or address it through our messaging in our various channels, I think is a nimblism that could be really, really helpful as well as kind of tightening that. I know Burlington's not far and you've got plenty of ties. Oh, okay. So just, and generally, that was one of my concerns too, is the idea of like outsourcing. To Todd's example of, going with the capable big firm, I think I sometimes also look at the inverse of that, of being able to work more closely with a small team, with an individual that you're working directly with on a close knit basis. But that's what's helping, kind of steering my vote at this point.
Larry, are you raising your hand or still,
Yep.
is it up from board? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the budget. I'm concerned that we have only a 6-month really full performance being offered. And I think they've done a magnificent job, but I think we need to be responsive to the people of the town of Woodstock that spoke very clearly on what we should be doing. I guess the other thing is that this business of don't switch now, don't change horses in the middle of the stream, that could go on in perpetuity. I don't think that that should be persuasive. It's not. You can always argue that. So that's all.
Go ahead.
Just to not shorthand Jess, I also would speak to the quality of her work. I think that her content is really excellent, and I know that she has a lot of success in running a blog and social media and her personal website. And so what I would say is that we are also getting a lot of quality. We've been staying.
We would
lower
get
end
it.
of our budget.
We would get.
And that's not to say, obviously, class 4 doesn't have a ton of quality. I'm just saying, like, Jess does come with 2 other individuals who are professionals, and it's a small team, but it's an accessible team that puts out quality work.
I just say a little bit.
Joe?
Well, the difference seems to be like a little over $20,000. Is that correct? Between the two?
About 25,000.
Yeah.
I would say.
So what are we gonna spend $25,000 on extra that we wouldn't spend from one to the other? And to me, it sounds like class 4 has been involved with this for like 2.5, 3 years. And they've accumulated a lot of knowledge or experience that we'd be paying an extra $20,000 for, 25,000. I think that's probably worth it, to me, anyway. Even though I'm not huge on the whole marketing concept at the beginning, but right now, at this point, to make this decision, that's what I base my decision on.
So unless there's, I don't, unless someone wants to come forward and say, look, sorry, let me step back. I'm sure we all have some uncertainty about this decision, but I'm also sensing, and just from the comments and the lack of comments, that no one is really feeling that their current decision, their current vote would change by the, sorry, Deborah?
I'm gonna do something that everybody's like, yeah, but I mean, Jess, I love your content. I mean, you are an incredibly talented person and what you do. The concern that I have is that we are we're resting on just social and SEO. And I'm concerned that it's not going to be, yes, you're going to be able to move really quickly if something happens in town and do something beautiful. I know that. But I just think just resting on the SEO of social is, it's just, we do need more than that in order to get what we need to have happen and be able to be, to ship. With that said, I love the idea of, hiring a woman and also local, and is there a way that there's a team here?
Oh, wow, I know she's going with this.
Within one budget. I don't know what the sources are over there. I'm just saying, what, if there's a possibility in that, I would hate to lose your talent. But I do think, anyway.
I do just want to clarify, though, that my proposal outlines that it would be web, email, and social. I'm not just relying on one or the other.
Charles?
Yes, yeah, I got you.
Sorry, I don't want to cut that. Go ahead, Charles. Did you want to, I mean, it's in effect a version of a question for you, for both of you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it makes sense for, Jess and I to talk a little bit more about our approach. We answered a lot of questions. Hopefully facilitated.
Can't hear Charles.
Unable to hear. Can we go to
Sorry
the
about
mic?
that. I was just adjusting. Jess and I both answered a lot of questions tonight, and hopefully we're able to facilitate some answers and deeper understanding. One thing that we may be able to do is just speak a little bit more about the actual proposals. Understanding that, I know you all have done your due diligence and read through those, but each talking in more detail about our approach, maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't.
I think more information does help. But I'd like to propose a way to do it that's different than continuing to talk about it tonight. Or I'd like to ask a question. And so the class 4 proposal envisions 2 periods of time. A period of time in which you're focused on achieving a new set of objectives, which we had asked for in a year, and you said you would try to achieve them in 6 months. And then a kind of a holding pattern of 6 months to accommodate the outer range of our budget. You put those in the order you put them in because you wanted, I assume that was the only order in which you could put them in order to get one of the objectives, which is May and June, happening this May and June. Right? In other words, well, I guess that beat around the bush. Yeah. What I'm suggesting is that those of us who voted for class 4 were comfortable with the notion that what we can afford is to get those objectives in 6 months and then just kind of keep the database warm for 6 months by communicating with people generally, keeping our social media presence and our website and email and so forth. Could we switch those and basically say, first of all, we only have 8 members. There's a vacancy where there are people that was just announced today with people applying for the new position. But also we could take time to understand in more detail the proposals. If you were to implement your month-by-month program now, might not have to be 6 months. It would probably preclude us from increasing revenues in this May and June, but it wouldn't preclude us from increasing them next May and June. It's a very desirable objective, and it would allow us to make a decision, a fully informed decision, and in any event, break a deadlock. I mean, we can sit here and, we can vote, and people want to, if there's any indication of someone change a vote, I will, I'll take another vote. And
I can give you
could you give us 2 months of that while, without changing your proposal?
I think one of the challenges that we had in the past 2 years was identifying a clear set of goals and sticking to those. And I know a lot of time was put into these goals. The timeline that we identified, it's not that it's a 6-month timeline. This is no different than if Jess came to the table and said, I can deliver those outcomes in 6 months versus 12. It's not that it's a 6-month versus a 12-month program. It's that we're delivering those 3 core objectives. Part of the timeline for that is certainly the off season. Part of that is a school choice as families consider over the summer those decision-making processes, and then looking at how to integrate that with the school system beginning in the fall. So there's some intentionality behind that.
Right.
I would say that, you talk about, it came up several times, benchmarking past performance and an understanding of whether this works or not. So we're the control, right? We've been here for 2 years. We've invested a huge amount of time and care and energy thinking through the answers to, and honestly, Roger and Larry, your comments tonight, I wish I could sit down and answer those in detail because we've considered those at length. Right. And I am someone who is active and local in the community, so I understand these objectives, but I just think that, look, if we can't deliver, there's no question about it. So maybe, one other suggestion would be to vote in August. at that point in time.
That's an,
And
That's what he's suggesting.
well, no, but
well, yeah, what I'm suggesting is essentially deliver our 6-month timeline. If we don't deliver,
how would that reduce? How would that reduce the cost? No, what would that reduce the
if
cost?
you're making your decision entirely for this year based on the budget you're talking about and not considering the long-term implications and essentially the investment that you've made, that's like taking $100,000 car and throwing it away because it needed a $600 axle. We're talking about a fairly insubstantial delta for the income that these initiatives will deliver. So yeah, that's why I suggest that basically. If your primary goal is to A, understand that it's working, and B, deliver on those objectives.
I will, hold on one second, Roger, just because I want to take another, we had some kind of back and forth. I don't want to assume anything. Let's just take another vote, not a vote, but a straw, what is it? Straw vote. All in favor of.
Wait. So let me understand this, Charlie. What you're saying is you can hold off getting paid until August, and in the meantime, we get some sense of what your job is, what you're going to be doing. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is essentially deliver without the 12-month timeline.
Yeah.
And then you can make a decision based on that. But you've already delivered the objectives, right? So regardless of how you, at that point in time, the objectives that are part of this RFP have been delivered.
$1,000, right? But that's.
I think that's sort of what we're voting on tonight. I mean,
Right.
Let me, hold on one second. I just would like to get a sense of whether anyone has shifted their position. So all those in favor of class 4, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those in favor of Jess Kirby LLC. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we haven't changed. All right, so this is, Roger, briefly.
Yeah,
Are you advocating or
I'm
making a process?
I'm making a process discussion. You're reopening the RFP in the meeting where you're supposed to be deciding on the RFP. That is potentially not against the rules, but it's certainly against the spirit of what should be happening. If you can't make a decision tonight, you should not make a decision. You shouldn't say, let's go with the other agency for X amount of months. That's just not appropriate.
Well, okay, with due respect, I was simply suggesting that they take, anyway, I agree with you that if we can't make a decision, we shouldn't make a decision. So I agree that what I was doing was changing the RFP, but anyway, reasonable people can disagree. All right, so we can't make a decision tonight. I do think that, sorry, Todd, go ahead, and then I'll make a.
So we don't agree, half of us. Makes perfect sense in government. What happens to the fact that the slow season's coming up now and we spent 45 minutes in this meeting opining about how that's possible to affect outcomes now for this short upcoming period that's so important to the town, so important to our objectives. So if we can't figure this out quickly, one way or the other, right, and hash this thing out, then we're going to miss a whole year of finding out if we know what we're doing, if we're spending our money wisely, and we're going to have to come up with the marketing budget for the next fiscal year with some of the same open-ended questions. We need to really do our best and see if we can spend more time debating tonight, even if we want to go to bed or my children are in the back here and we're on vacation. We need to spend more time, I think, to try to see if we can get me to change my vote or someone to change theirs, in my opinion. For that reason alone, like we're right there to find out if we can make an impact and understand what we're doing with these dollars.
Well, what if I think we do need to move quickly. I think we could do it tonight, but what if we were to do it, on Saturday morning, just give everyone kind of a day. We can go back and read the proposals again. I think I'd like to reread them in light of tonight's discussion. Is that?
I would like to reread them too. I just don't think we should punt this further down the road, but I'm certainly comfortable with a special meeting personally, anytime when you need it.
How does that, I mean, I'm
okay with it.
Tonight or
Saturday morning is tough for me. I can't make Saturday night. After Saturday morning.
I can't make Saturday morning.
All right.
Not Saturday, not Saturday.
Sunday morning?
Saturday's fine.
Not Sunday, not Sunday.
Really?
I can do Sunday.
Claire's got a big weekend.
Strategic scheduling, so then we lose one vote.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
What is that?
Any day of the week.
What day is today? Thursday? Tomorrow,
Friday. Tomorrow's
Uh,
Friday.
tomorrow morning? Do we just sleep on it or is that not?
I can't do, I'm in the car, man, traveling like 5 hours in the car tomorrow. I can try calling in. I mean, I want to personally, I want to reread everything tonight and then see if I'm missing something that changes into my heart of hearts. I think the presentations have been great. I don't know if, Larry's going to say something to convince me otherwise, although your point, Larry, about switching that made sense to me. And I took that into consideration and moved the needle a bit. But I can't do it tomorrow, but I can call in by the phone if that's necessary. I wouldn't hold it up.
What, next Thursday night at 6:30, same time? We
Okay.
seem to be a good time for people. And Jess and Charles, could you be available for that? And actually, I'm going to suggest that in between now and then, that we have a more active back and forth between Jess and Charles and any of us who have questions of them. In fact, I would suggest that the questions don't go through the marketing committee, not because there's any problem with that, but just because it would be easier. You all should have, or if you don't have, just have Jess and Charles emails. And I think people should just, is there any problem with that? Just people communicating with either of them or both of them directly?
That would be.
Anyone have a concern about that? It's not a process issue,
don't.
is it? I mean, it's not a,
Can we doodle poll offline after this meeting? That I can't do Thursday either. I'm on an airplane. Can we doodle poll it and find a
Sure.
time?
On airplane Thursday.
yeah, okay, yes, all right. Well, so what we'll try to do is within 1 week,
That sounds great.
we'll try to set it up between now and next Thursday night.
And that's because we're all saying we don't think talking about it more tonight's helpful. We need review time, which I don't disagree with that. That's what we're saying.
I think the ability to have the documents in front of us, read them again, interact with Charles and Jess, give them chances to talk to each one of us individually or whatever. I know it's a burden and a pain, but it's
Okay.
sort of what we're all suggesting, and I know, yeah, but I'm sure
Okay.
Jess is.
Yeah, okay.
So I think it's kind of a waste of time to even talk about which one you're going to do unless you solve that privacy question. No, it's not, John, no.
To cut you off. I apologize. I understand the point. The point has been made. We understand it's serious. It's 9:15. I'll talk to you until the end of time after this meeting, and we'll make sure that we deal with it. I appreciate it. I understand you're saying that the town is at risk.
Yeah, we're breaking the law. We're breaking the law.
Understand that. I understand we're breaking. Okay, so
Do you get to cover the mic? Can you say that? Oh, trouble.
not one by one, but we will publish the email. So I'll set up a process by asking people to copy an email address, and I'll put those emails on the website. But no, individual communications does not violate the open meeting. Yeah.
I'm happy to just,
Having a session.
yeah, I was gonna say, just.
Yeah.
We could post some times.
Yeah. Have a Zoom meeting. Yeah. Yes.
Zoom would be fine.
Yeah, and Jess, you would host a Zoom meeting as well, a separate one? Or would you be
Sure.
comfortable with that presumably? All right,
Yeah.
so I'll do a doodle poll for times for 2 Zoom meetings for the two groups to share. It's okay to do them separately, right? I think I mean, there's been enough back and forth between the two, but I think it might be productive to do it separately just to see.
John,
As
is
well-
that an issue if you have more than half the people, half of the members on a Zoom?
We'll post those as public meetings.
Okay.
And so I'll do a doodle poll as to what those schedules are. I will set up a time when all of us can meet for the vote. But I will optimize, but may not be every single person can attend the Zoom meetings, and I will publish emails between the parties and we'll record the Zoom meeting. So everyone can hear and see, if follow what I'm saying? I think that's a pretty comprehensive thing. We'll get all of this done within 1 week, we hope. I mean, we need to try really hard to do that.
There are worse problems than having 2 highly competent
Right.
applications. I mean, it sucks that we have to go through it. It's been a long process, but I think this is a good move.
Okay, good. And I think that, yeah, and I.
Well put, Todd.
Yeah, and I'll echo
One of
that.
the
I
few.
think, yeah, I think this is the best discussion we've had on this subject, and it's in part because of the work that the marketing team did. Thank you very much, Greta
Yeah.
and Beth and Jeff, and
Move
thank you
adjourn.
to Charles and Jess. And we need a motion to adjourn.
I move.
there a second?
Second.
Any- All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Stay all
Turnout
night.
for our meeting too.
Stick around.